What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale coming at you, as always, with my certified fantabulous co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. It's that time of year again. We're on to our official 2024-2025 NBA year-end awards prediction. We're going through the Big Eight. We're not going to do, I don't know if we did all NBA, all rookie, and all defense last year, but that might be something to check in on midseason, but that's more fun to do after we've watched the actual game. So we have our ballots for these 8 awards. Before we get to it, Grant, 1, how are you doing? And 2, how are you feeling about this exercise?
I'm a little disappointed you didn't accept my 11th hour. It was like more like the 11:59th hour of like, hey, let's turn this into a draft. but that's okay. I understand that the graphics take work, and then we wouldn't really be doing predictions, which is kind of what these. So this isn't. So sometimes in things like this, we have to do like who should win versus who you think will win.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think about this that way? And if so, is this your who should win or who you think will win? And is there a difference?
There's definitely a difference. I did it as I'm filling out my ballot. If we had to vote right now, this is how I would be voting. So I did it from my perspective. Like, this is who I think will be the MVP. And like in some instances, I recognize too that my choices, they're all like, you should, statistically speaking, you should always bet on the field. But in some cases, I kind of recognize that I view it this way, but I actually like maybe this player doesn't even appear on the ballot because I know that a vast majority of voters are going to think about it through a different lens.
Yeah. And I guess like the who should win aspect is a lot harder to make a case for when we don't have any games played yet. So like, what is your should based on at this point? So yeah,
Did you approach it from who you think is going to win then?
More or less, like, but I guess as I'm talking it out, the distinction I drew kind of is not that stark because again, there's nothing to base it on. It's like, you know, at the end of last year or at the end of any year, it's like where the voting seems to be trending. And then you might have someone that you think, well, the numbers say that it should be this guy. We don't have the numbers yet. So I think I mostly looked at it as just, if I had to fast forward to the end of the season, what do I think like a good ballot should look like? And so, I guess in that sense, it is who I think is actually gonna win or, place versus, it's pretty hard to predict who you think will be like unjustly overlooked, having no numbers to base that on at this point.
There's only like anecdotally you can make the case of voter fatigue for certain players would be the way to go that route. That's what I tried to ignore is I guess the best way to frame it throughout this process is I don't, if people are tired of seeing the same players mentioned on the MIP ballot, or like I tried not to think of it in those terms where I look, oh, so-and-so finished 4th in MIP last year. Like, does that mean that he can't win it this year? No, it shouldn't mean it that, even though people, I think voters, some might view it that way. Be like, well, did he improve enough from being, top 5 of MIP last year? So that's always the challenge. Before we get started, a very quick reminder, because there's still time, our over-under competition where you compete against Grant and I, and you can win a merch item of your choice, but also the chance to guest host a mailbag podcast. Join our Discord and enter. The link to the Discord's in the podcast and YouTube description. You can go in there. There's a specific server room. I'll post a link again. It's pinned in the room, but for people who aren't familiar with Discord, I might even throw Grant in that. You could pin something? Like, what's a pinned post? I'll throw the link in there again. You could fill it out, just over-unders, and you could see how you stack up. And it turns out Grant and I are eminently beatable based off what happened last year.
Yeah, no, like this is your chance, people. It's not a high bar to clear. Clearly, you can succeed with minimal effort. I feel very confident that we will not win or finish 1-2. No chance.
Let's get started. We will begin with MVP. We always have this discussion, Grant, beforehand. We didn't this year because I know how you like to do it. Where it's, well, do we go with the the sexiest award first or last to try and hook people in? For us, it shouldn't matter because you're welcome, everybody. We timestamp shit. But that's always something I'm thinking about is, do you keep people watching a little longer? Should we not reveal our ballots at the top instead of discussing them? I like the idea of just, hey, here's our top 5 ballot from MVP. Let's talk about it. And so you can see it on screen right now. Here's our top 5. Grant, you want to roll through yours?
Yeah. So, and then here's the question. Do I go 1 to 5? Do I go 5 to 1? I'm just going to do it 1 to 5. So I have Luka Doncic number 1, Jokic 2, Giannis 3, SGA 4, and Wemby 5. So the Luka part of it, let's just start there. I mean, I just think, this is so ridiculous, but it's like, it feels like it's time. It feels surprising that he hasn't won one yet. And we went into the finals last year with a Boston team that was just like crushing everybody. And I remember having the conversation of like, I think I got to give Boston like 6 games just because of Luka, like that, trying to figure out that series. And he was not even 100%. So the numbers are going to be insane. The possibility that Klay Thompson actually does make a huge difference on offense is there. And he's just like right at that point in his career where maybe there's like, I mean, how much better can you really get than Luka has been? But maybe there's like a 5% bump and that's all it takes.
Him averaging a triple double is possible.
Sure.
And that could,
Yeah. Like, I think really one of the things that gave me the most pause here, I'd be curious if this factored for you at all, because we're pretty similar. And I'd like to hear the Jokic case too, like as if like you need to really make a Jokic case. He's won 3 out of 4.
wow, spoilers. I didn't
Like,
get to reveal my ballot to the listeners
well,
yet.
they're
Damn.
looking at it. But so real quick before I give it to you, like, we think Dallas is going to be a top 4 team in the West. Like we've that's consensus probably. But is that enough if Dallas is 4th and Luka has like, I think, like they might have to be 2nd or they might have to just have, be 3rd, but win 55 games or something like that. And he has to have the numbers. Like that aspect of MVP is because we both have several West guys here. That's like a little curveball in the analysis, I think.
Yeah. So one, based off your ballot, it's very clear that you hate America. I just want to throw that out there to any Patriots.
Oh, look at me. International coalition. I didn't even realize that.
So I have Jokic at 1, Luka at 2, SGA at 3, Jalen Brunson at 4, and then Giannis at 5. There's so many different places to go. It came down to Luka or Jokic for me. I tried to give SGA a ton of consideration. I honestly think now that I'm like the way that I know the MVP unfolds, even the way I think about it, where I'm looking at how good do I think this player is in a vacuum, and then how indispensable do I think he is to his team in the sense that it's not just about how bad they are without him, but how much better does he make them? And SGA, I want to be clear, I think is high on that scale, but like the indispensability factor, when you look at like him versus Jalen Brunson's, like the Knicks unloaded their entire war chest of assets, and they are now more dependent on Jalen Brunson than they were before. So that is one I struggled with. The Jokic case, though, I want to be clear, I don't think he's going to win. I think that he's won. He can't win 4. He can't do that. I mean, 1, yes, he can. I look at it as I don't know if they're sleeping on the Nuggets, but the coverage of the Nuggets has skewed so far from where they were when they won a title to where that if they're 2nd in the West again, and all these people, including us on some of these, not all these fronts, but some of these fronts, have spent all this time worrying or questioning Jamal Murray, the fit of Russell Westbrook, them transitioning maybe too much into some of these younger guys. If despite all those concerns, yeah, okay, those players, let's say Christian Brown and Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther are all great. The Russell Westbrook fit pans out. Jokic is going to be like at the 4 of the, like, you think Peyton Watson's going to get a lot better on the offensive end without being reliant on Nikola Jokic? No. Yeah. You think the Russell Westbrook fit is going to pan out in any way unless Nikola Jokic helps kind of smooth it over? I mean, maybe in the minutes that he's not on the court since Russell will be coming off the bench. So he's going to have that going for him on top of just what I had mentioned before, which was there's all these reasons to doubt the Nuggets now. And if they just end up near the top of the West, which I have said some pretty critical things of the Nuggets this offseason, I still hit their over. I still had them. What did I have them? 3rd in the Western Conference. He's the best player in the NBA. He's an Iron Man. When when you're worrying about availability, that was the other thing. Who do you think's more like this was the splitting hairs thought process. Who is more likely to not play in 65 games this year, Luka or Jokic?
Oh, right. Yeah. Jokic is just going to, Jokic is going to be out there. Like that's just one of his defining features.
And I think the final thing that shifted it for me, and you could maybe make the case for Luka in this way because of where Kyrie is in his career, which player on this list, I mean, Jalen Brunson is the answer, but when we're looking at the top 3 or like just most of the candidates, which other MVP candidates are less likely to have an all-star teammate? Jalen Brunson's probably even more likely to have an all-star teammate because he has Towns. And I would trust Towns to make an all-star game in the East before I'm going to trust Jamal Murray to do it in the West, let alone trust Jamal Murray to do it all. So those factors just kind of swayed it. But Luka feels like the right pick. I don't like the it's his time argument. I think he's just really fucking transcendent.
So you have SGA third and I have him fourth. And so by definition, we're not like slighting him. We're saying he's going to be no worse than the fourth most valuable player in the league by the end of the season.
Which is a slide from where he was last year.
So that's what I wanted to get into is like, factoring in that pretty much everybody on planet Earth thinks the Thunder are going to win the West and their win total is going to be in the 60s or whatever. And SGA is going to be the best player on that team. Did you give any thought to SGA ranking higher than third? And like, I guess really my question is like, why not? Like, what is the reason we both don't have SGA? Because I agree, it's 1-2 to me. It's Luka and Jokic in some order, and then it's after that. It's like, well, something strange will have to happen. I feel like for someone else to win. So what prevented SGA for you from being higher than he is?
So I actually had the field a little bit more open than you going into it. Any of these five players, like there were points where I was like, man, Brunson at number one makes so much sense because anecdotally, he's almost the Jokic East in the sense of where, like, okay, the Knicks have talent, but where are they if Jalen Brunson isn't on the court? Nowhere is the answer. But the SGA argument is, and I hated framing it in these terms, is he's going to have so much talent around him that I think it'll be harder to separate just how valuable he is to uplifting the Thunder. And it's almost like the Jason Tatum argument of it all, except that he is more undeniable because of the self-creation or the table setting for others when it comes to the offensive end. He's like, it just wouldn't shock me though. I mean, you laid out his case that the Thunder win 60 plus games. He's the best player on that team. And it's not, what people don't like about Jason Tatum is essentially that he's not Luka Doncic. Like, they either want the assist numbers to come up or they want him to defend the other team's best player, kind of like what Giannis would do. And that's not even what Giannis does. So that's a bad argument. Shea has a stronger case as the best player on the best team than a Tatum would, just because I think he has more of the numbers that people want. But there's also the thing I worry about putting him 3 is that isn't there a chance, because I'm just assuming, okay, Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams might be all-stars right now. And like, that's part of the, how do you separate his value independent of them? There's a chance that this team just doesn't have enough on-ball creation if those two don't take leaps. Like, you could mention Caruso or Hartenstein when he's healthy, or Aaron Wiggins if you want to. Like, I almost felt uneasy putting him at 3 because there's just a real chance, okay, the Thunder are winning 65 games, but their offense is just nowhere even near league average or like functional when he's off the floor.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think for me, so like, and this applies to Brunson a little bit too, where like, just to keep it confined to SGA though, like, I don't think he can be better than he was last year. And like, by definition, he sort of has to be better than that to win. And the other thing is, like, I do think there's reasons to believe beyond the sheer like amount of talent around him that some of his production might dip, and like, we don't necessarily think of him first in this sort of conversation, but he was negatively affected by the league changing how its rules were enforced last year, because he's just like, he's an ace foul drawer. And in January, he averaged over 10 free throw attempts a game. And he never got back above that, which is like right around, post All-Star break is when it really turned down in terms of like the referees kind of giving the offensive player the benefit of the doubt on contact shooting attempts. Like, he was down a couple free throw attempts a game for the next couple months, down in the playoffs. So like, if the question, if it's about him needing to be better, like production wise, I just don't see the path for that. So the only way you do get there is if the Thunder win, an ungodly number of games and he's roughly the same. But I actually think his numbers might dip for reasons beyond the talent. And I think Brunson's a little bit that way too. Not that his numbers are going to dip, but like, how can he be better than last year? He could be more important, but I don't know if he's got more in him, because last year he was so good and that wasn't enough, to be in a serious run for it last year.
Your point on Shea is a good one. I guess the pathway to him being better would be, does he take 4 3-pointers a game instead of 2 and hits them at a ridiculous? And then it's, with Brunson, it's easier to envision his stat line being glitzier, because I think look at the playmaking specifically, I think the Knicks without a healthy Randall or without Randall at all need him to do that more than ever. And I could see his numbers going up. Let's say he takes the same number of shots. So many more of them inside the arc are going to be like semi-open compared to what they were last year. So he could be more efficient. I really want to talk to you. Well, I want to focus on the Giannis. I'm glad that you actually put him at 3. It feels like we just forget it. Giannis was so dominant last year. He changed his shot profile a little bit, cut out a lot of the junk.
Yep.
I don't know why he's not like, this is when you're at this level. It's like, does anyone, well, I'm going to ask you about Wemby in a second, but like when you're splitting hairs between SGA, Luka, Jokic, and Giannis, it's just like, if you think Giannis needs to win, I'm not going to fight you on like, if our ballots make you mad, I think your 5th place guy in Wemby could make some people mad, and there might be something to think about there. But when we're talking about those other even if you think that Brunson's become inflated, but like we're splitting hairs at this level. The Giannis case, though, why isn't he like? Why have we were at a point where it just felt like he was a default? Well, for you, he was a default top 3 option. Like, I don't even have a good logic for why I don't think he's here. I'm worried a little bit about when it comes to games played. I think he does not have as much agency over the offense with Damian Lillard there. I'm like, he's still the same type of player defensively, but he's getting a little bit older and isn't going to rely on his athleticism as much. What does that look like? Again, I'm already split hairs. So I'm curious why you have him number 3. Like, what convinces you to throw him in that tier?
Yeah, so I would start by acknowledging there are some pretty significant like downside angles here, which is the age. To me, he's not in his athletic prime anymore. And he's a player that, like, when he was just, I say was, like, it's over, like, he, had one of his best seasons ever last year. I do think he's someone that depends more on athleticism than like technical skill than a lot of these other guys. Like, certainly, him versus like Luka or Giannis is just like, or Luka or Jokic is like night and day in terms of like run and jump athleticism versus like technical mastery. Those guys are just very different. So I think he could slip a little bit. And the Bucks situation obviously has massive downside because of the age of the core, because of questions about depth, because of like, maybe it's not a situation where like the Dame Giannis thing will just be better because it's year 2 and Dame had an offseason to get in shape. Like, that's all valid. I just felt like he just clearly, to me, is still the 3rd best guy in the league. I think the floor is really high. It was almost like it felt like a safe pick for me. And I do think, to just sort of argue against myself, there is like, would you be shocked if the Giannis Dame pick and roll like actually did work this year? Like, I wouldn't. I think it's possible that just becomes a real weapon in ways that we hoped it would last year. And like,
I'm sorry, how does that make a case? Oh, you're making a case against you saying there's downside.
Yeah. I was just going through the possible downsides for like justifying you having him 5th, for example. Like, yeah, there's a lot of ways that Giannis, his season could be disappointing, with quotes around it, because that's a relative term when you're that good. But I do think there are a couple like potential glass half full things that, I don't think I could get him higher than 3rd. But like, I just felt like it's Giannis. He's still close enough to being in his prime. Way more defensive value than anybody on my ballot other than Wemby, obviously. And it's just like, he's going to get 30 and 11 and 5 and be efficient and be pretty durable. So, like, that's a 3rd MVP, 3rd place MVP to me.
I do think subconsciously most of us, and I'll definitely throw myself in this, tend to gravitate towards the players who are responsible for more self-creation or a larger part of everyone else's offense. And Giannis is kind of, he's not just a play finisher, and he does have the secondary playmaking element, but he's not a primary self-creator. He's also not the primary table setter. But this is what I hate doing, because now I'm discrediting, and I actually think so. Part of the downside you mentioned probably buoys his case to where it's, well, there's downside for the Bucks, and so if they're really good again, but you don't, Chris Middleton takes a while to ramp up or isn't as good. Is this the year that Brook Lopez slips measurably? What if Dame just isn't, I'm penciling him for a bounce back year in the sense of, yeah, he's going to hit the open threes, guys. Right. What if he doesn't? And so that could work in his favor if the Bucks are still right there and he's putting up the same type of numbers. I have to ask you about this, though. I understand Wemby's value in a vacuum, and I don't think there's such a thing as necessarily hyperbole when it comes to Wemby. Do you think that we have reached a point where people can, and this isn't really into your own view now, it's more about the feasibility of Wemby being on this ballot. Do you think we've reached a point where someone can be on a team that'll probably be below 500, if we're being honest, and is top 5 on the MVP, or is part of your calculus that you just think the Spurs are going to be so good, like 44 wins or something with Wemby, that's why he's top 5 for you?
It's more, I think the real like distilled explanation is I just want to be on the right side of history here. Like I just want to have it memorialized that I had Wemby in the top 5 on my ballot. I just needed his name there. And obviously like Brunson and Tatum are the names. One of those two should probably be there, but I picked Wemby one because of that. Like I do think he's just going to be a transcendent talent. Like, and I want to be able to look back and say like, yep, I had him on there in his second year. The other thing is, and no, I don't think the Spurs are going to be, 44. That's pretty optimistic. Realistically, they need like high 40s probably for him to have any chance at winning. I'm not saying he's going to have a chance at winning. I do think his individual numbers are going to be so insane that there will be a lot of people that just say like, I can't keep a guy averaging 30, 15, 5, 4, and 3 off my MVP ballot. Like I can't do it because clearly that's insanely valuable. And I spoiler alert, he's going to rate high in Defensive Player of the Year. So just from an individual statistical production basis, I do think he's going to be one of the 5 most impactful players in the league this year. I don't think he's going to win MVP. I need his name on there. And that's so 5th was just like, that's where he has to be.
I think if people are looking at how good the Spurs are on the floor with him, that might be his entire case.
There you go.
And I've always struggled with that, to where it's like, how much do we penalize these players? Like Wemby last year, like how much do you penalize the Defensive Player of the Year stuff? They were in like the 75th percentile of defensive performance with him on the court, but they weren't a good defensive team overall. And so that was people's argument is, well, they weren't a good defensive team. How much do you penalize him for the minutes he's not on the court? But at the same time, like when part of the value of a Jokic or a Luka is how bad their teams are without them, it's a lot of pretzel twisting. I think what bodes well for him is that talent-wise, impact-wise, I think he could have top 5 impact. Who remembers? I feel like you remember when it comes, mostly because all these other ballots are 3. MVP is the only one that's 5. I feel like everyone remembers 1st, 2nd, maybe 3rd place. And so I do believe that there will be maybe more voters than is normal because it's Wemby. They're just like, well, I'll throw him in 5th because it's 5th. What am I like? Or if Jason Tatum doesn't finish 5th because Wemby does, who is that really harming? Who is that really angering? And I think that I hate to simplify his case down to that, but when we're looking strictly at the top 5, that might be the best argument, is like he's so good and people don't really care who's 5th.
That kind of is it. Like that's my thinking a little bit, is like putting him 5th to me, a lot of times, like if you have Giannis 5th, for example, like Giannis could win it. And it's like, we've made the case for how Wemby, I don't think has any chance of actually winning it, but I still need, and so like in contrast, like I don't have Brunson on mine. Like I could imagine a scenario where Brunson wins it. I want Wemby on there because I think it's going to look completely nuts if he has the statistical season I think he's going to have, and I didn't put him on my at the bottom of my ballot.
What's the number of wins? And we don't necessarily look at the awards for this, but what's the number of wins the Spurs would need to have for people to actually put him on he could win this race? Does it need to be, oh no, they just won 50 something games? Or is it like, if the Spurs are 43-39 with an upper echelon defense, or is it just like, what if they're just one of the top 6 teams? And I guess that takes, let's say 46 games is kind of the benchmark there. Maybe that's even too low.
I mean, if they're in the top 6 in this West that we keep, it's such a broken record, but like the West looks really tough at the top. Like that should be enough. So assuming his impact individually is what we project it to be, right? Because like I just like, I don't know. A lot of my thinking on Wemby kind of circles back to this same core idea of like, at some point, there's going to be someone that is just doing stuff we've never imagined was possible before. Like it'll happen. And maybe it's not Wemby. Maybe it's some guy that's like 12 years old right now that, is going to come into the league next decade. But like, it feels like it's him. And so that puts everything on the table, from, what his box score numbers are to like how many wins it takes to get an MVP award, to like maybe what it sort of reformats for us is like, how many wins can a single guy actually add to a team's total? Like maybe the Spurs just win 50 games because he's like that dominant and nothing else matters. Now I don't think
If
that's
they
going to
win
happen.
50, he wins MVP, right? There's just
There's your number. If they win 50, he's got it.
over.
Yeah, 43 probably not, to just answer your question, but you get into the mid 40s, which again I don't think is likely. Like then you got to have a conversation.
Yeah, I would say I think this isn't a win number. It's what you were saying. If they are a top 6 seed in the West, which again I would not predict. So last year that is 50 games. Phoenix had 49 last year. Like that. So if they're 6th in the West, I would say that it's over. Like maybe Luka at that point could kind of, because then that's when you get into the real anecdotal conversation about it all. So maybe Luka anecdotally could, like, that's the one you pit against him.
Yeah.
But if they won 49 games, it's over. He has to be the MVP at that point.
I mean, I think I know the team success is a huge component of MVP. And the reason that's the case is because like we somewhat correctly think that the best players are the ones that help you win the most. But like to your point, and the one we kind of talk about all the time, it's like, well, they're not in control of what happens when they're not on the floor. Like, and in fact, in Jokic's case, we always point to that as like, oh, he's the MVP, but actually like he's even better than that. Cause look how shitty Denver is when he doesn't play. I think that's really going to come into focus for Wemby too. Right. Like, and maybe we'll get to a point in our analysis where we just stop caring about how good the team is when he's not in the game. And you just look at how good they are with him. And maybe there's where the Spurs do play like a 50+ win team when he's in the game, and we'll get sophisticated enough to just look at that. That's kind of like wishful thinking, I would imagine, based on, how the votes tend to go. But like, again, maybe he's the guy, because it's coming at some point. It's coming where he just forces a reevaluation of everything. Maybe it's him.
So we've mentioned, obviously, Wemby would be an honorable mention for me. I think we both talked about Tatum already. He would certainly be up there. Any other names that you could kind of see party crashing this discussion?
I think Tyrese Halliburton, if the Pacers can be top 4 in the East, and he on kind of the Nash theory of an MVP, where it's like, this is the best offense in the league and he's the whole reason. Like there's a precedent for that. But I wouldn't put him on my ballot, I don't think, but like, he sort of was on our ballots for a lot of last year. So there's sort of proof of concept there. Zion, I think, probably is another one. Just the statistical impact could be ridiculous if he holds up health wise. Like he's just kind of been a top 10, top 8, top 7 MVP guy in the past. So that's there. There's a lot of guys that I just wrote off as not, likely to play enough games. So I don't know. Do you have anybody else? Do you have Ja, for example? I think that would be another name people might expect.
Really give him consideration, but if he plays enough games and the Grizzlies are good, that's a good one for sure. What about, and of course, I don't expect Embiid to play enough games either. I'm trying to think of could you see just like, look, they haven't had a league average offense since like the Cretaceous period, but if the Magic are all of a sudden good on offense without making any really offensive focused additions, I know they have KCP. Paolo feels like the way that Tyrese Halliburton, had he never gotten injured, party crashed the discussion last year. I could see him, like, Magic are top 4 in the East. Their offense is around league average or better. I could see Paolo. He's more efficient than he's ever been. I could kind of see him entering the fold.
That's a good one.
Here's one. You ready to galaxy brain this?
Do
heliocentrism at its finest. What if the Clippers are just a top 6 team without Kawhi? Harden just wedges his way back in there.
No fucking chance.
Okay.
There's just he's 35. If we're gonna pick 35-year-olds, I got some other ones I'd put ahead of him. We didn't mention. I mean, is it Devin Booker is gonna get some vote splitting with KD probably, but I don't know that either of those two are likely to play enough games.
I would think Booker probably will. I mean, KD did last year. He was pretty fucking good. Yeah. I would say what almost hurts Devin Booker is that the ball is going to be out of his hands a little bit less. Maybe there's the uptick in defense and his scoring numbers won't suffer as much, but the addition of Tyus Jones kind of telegraphed, like, his best case when surrounded by like 2 other stars is, he could average 27 points and 9 assists because he is their point guard.
Yeah.
That's just not the case for him anymore.
Last year might have kind of been his shot, really, just because of the situation and the facilitating he had to do.
What happens? What just happens? What's more likely? Let's phrase it this way. Let's say the Lakers are top 4 in the West. Is Anthony Davis or LeBron more likely to be on this ballot, or is JJ Redick more likely to be considered coach of the year? You can only pick one of the.
If they're top 4 in the West, I would assume that that feels to me like Anthony Davis is super healthy and is maybe defensive player of the year and is like a guy we have to talk about for MVP. That feels like the most likely of those options to me.
You're probably right. Is
Redick
there
is interesting though, because like I can imagine like people wanting to speak that into existence, him just being a phenomenal coach, like out of the gate.
Is there any of these just like mid? Like anyone could Bam or Jimmy sneak in here, depend if they're going to play enough games? I mean, that's not too much of a concern with Bam.
I mean, we both think the Cavs are going to be awesome. I think down ballot Donovan Mitchell is someone that could be in somewhere in the 6 to 10 range potentially.
That's a great call out because I had him at some point last season as first team All NBA before the games thing kind of undermined him.
Yeah,
that's a really good. But that's just I struggled. It comes to this with Devin Booker. I think even with Anthony Davis and LeBron, when you have another, so in Donovan Mitchell's case, it's just you have these 3 other super high-end players, or any of whom could make an all-star. Like you have 4 guys on that team that could be all-stars. Shai's case is kind of like that, but because none of them have been all-stars before, it's kind of easy to overlook it. Those are the situations. I'm not saying the MVP needs to be like Giannis isn't necessarily on a heliocentric team. I mean, Jokic is not heliocentric in the conventional sense. So, but it's tough for me because I think about vote cannibalization, where it's like, if you told me Embiid played in 70 games this year, I probably still wouldn't put him on this ballot.
Well, it's like a non-starter. It's just like all of it. Even if there wasn't all this talk about preserving him for the playoffs, you couldn't go into this with him on your ballot. I'm not getting past the games played thing. I know I'm fighting the hypothetical here. But yeah, like even if he did play enough, you would assume that just like Paul George and Tyrese Maxey are going to have great numbers. And it's just it's hard to imagine him winning again, but we don't have to, because he's not going to play enough games. Anybody else we're not getting to? You mentioned like Bam and Jimmy, I guess.
I have one.
We haven't said Steph, but like, that's just, he's not, I just don't see how that happens.
Well, isn't it's kind of the same pathway as if the Warriors are in the top 6 with this current roster. I guess you could look at it. Oh, is Kuminga most improved player?
It might be a function of depth. They just have, they just started.
If they have like a top 10 offense or something, like he might be in the discussion because I know they have a ton of talent, but it's none that I think you would guarantee. I mean, I know Lindy Waters the third is something else, but like, who on this team do you consider an elite offensive talent, or even just like a decidedly above average offensive talent aside from Steph? And it's okay, Buddy Hield, of course, but like he does like the shooting thing. It's not like he's table setting for people or something. Yeah.
No, so the thing is, like, what kind of season does Steph have to have individually to just have better numbers than Jokic, Luka, SGA, like all these guys? It's gonna be so hard.
And I think that's even though I have Giannis 5th, like the 4 players I think of is like, you have to be statistically as good or better than Jokic, Luka, SGA, and Giannis, like the video game numbers they put up. And with Brunson, okay, we know the Wemby path, he just might have video game numbers himself. With Brunson, it's honestly, Brunson should probably average 30 points and 8 assists this year. And like, that's a number where it's, you could be in the MVP. Like if Jason Tatum averaged 7 assists per game last year, I bet you he finishes inside the top 3 of MVP. I know that's stupid. Here's one.
This is the thing. We got to do Tatum here, because neither of us has him in our top 5. Both of us think that the Celtics are going to win 1 million games, and he's going to be just as good, probably, as last year. Is it just, for me, it was just like, well, I just don't know what he's got to do. Like, I don't think he has that next level to get up to the, serious conversation that the top, like, say 3 or 4 occupy here. Is that kind of where you're at on him?
I just struggle to pick a 19-year-old to win MVP. It's unprecedented.
It's still too soon.
So I think his pathway, because I do think he has a pathway, is that if he, we kind of soar towards, let's say, like the latter part of their playoff run, like if he becomes that level of playmaker as a default, to where it's like, he just averaged 6-7 assists per game, that feels like because he's never going to be the most important defender on this team. He's still a good defender. And so when you look at all of these other players, you would say, for the most part, that they're the most important players in 2 key areas of the game. And I think for Boston, you could make the case that he's their most important scorer and passer, but it's more of a stretch than like when you're trying to check that second box. So, and that's not a good reason to leave him off. Some people like to default to the best player on the best team, and if that's the case, it should be between SGA and Tatum. Probably would be the top two. I do have one more I want to nominate. If I had to put money on a long shot, and I don't bet, but if I had to, just Zion Williamson.
Yeah,
like if he just if the Pelicans are good and start maybe Herb Jones is one of the top 5 centers in the NBA. Who knows at that point? But seriously, if the Pelicans we have a lot of questions about them, but if he's just healthy, and if you told me they're top 4 in the West, I know we have our 4 teams in some order, like OKC, Dallas, Minnesota, Denver done. But if you told me New Orleans removed one of the non-OKC teams from there, it wouldn't shock me. And I think that would put him kind of similar to Ja. That would certainly put him in the discussion.
Yeah, I think that's right. I definitely have him as an honorable mention too. It's he's another guy that I think at this stage of the conversation, which we should probably end soon because we've gone a half an hour on one award. I think it's helpful to look at guys that that maybe have improvement ahead. Because really, this top group is other than Wemby, throw him out. These guys are about as good as you can play. Realistically, it's hard to be any better than these guys have been. What if Zion really is just going to hold up and is in shape and is recommitted to all the stuff he hasn't been? There's a possibility he has another level that we haven't seen yet. And so that would in addition to the Pelicans being kind of sneaky, able to get into that top 4 if things go right, he might just not be done getting better, right? That's a possibility for him in ways it's not for a couple other guys.
The other thing too isn't the pathway we've already seen the in shape, the post play-in tournament Zion last year. If he's just that for the entire season and the Pelicans win enough games, what is the argument against including him in this discussion?
And what if he's just better than that? That's totally on the table. I think it's not. Is it likely? I don't know, but
he becomes statistically one of the most valuable rim protectors or something.
Yeah, whatever. Or he just decides to rebound, or if he, I don't think the shooting components ever come in. It doesn't look like based on the trends of the last couple of years, but he could just average 33 a game and shoot 65% from the field because you just cannot stop him from finishing at the bucket. That's, I don't know. That's
in play.
Yeah.
It does feel like there's probably close to is 15 too big of a number to say not win, but that could populate some spot in the top 5. 15 might be a realistic
number.
I
think that's about right because those are all NBA teams. And if you're on an all NBA team, generally speaking, you're you're not necessarily in the top 5 at any point of the year, but you're in the broader conversation for MVP.
Did you want to shout out any member of the Kings really quickly before we move on? No,
I think we're good.
Do you want to guess which award is next since you haven't seen the order that I put them in?
I'm going to guess you did Defensive Player of the Year next.
We've been podcasting together. Some might say for too long. I would say not long enough. Defensive Player of the Year. I'll go first on this one. I have Bam in what might be an upset because Bam isn't Wemby. I have Wemby at 2, Gobert at 3. Do you just want to give your ballot? Our ballots are, well, they're actually pretty. I thought we had 2 of the same guys on it. Your ballot I find absolutely fascinating. I applaud you for your 3rd place pick.
Yeah. So I go Wemby 1, just the runaway favorite betting wise right now. And I just, if he blocks 5 shots a game, I don't know how you fail to give him Defensive Player of the Year. Chet 2 and Evan Mobley 3. I don't know. I feel like this might be the most Evan Mobley stock I've ever had, which is saying something because I had a lot or very early on when who were his comps? Do you remember there was Kevin Garnett comps and really early it's what kind of player is he going to be?
It was what if Kevin Garnett and Kevin Durant were one player?
Yeah. Might have had more stock then, but got a lot. Well, and here's the other thing, and I'll send it back to you because I think you need to justify this Bam pick here.
Why?
Well, a little bit over Wemby and Gobert, I guess. I don't have Gobert on my ballot. I probably should. I feel so. I think OKC's defense is going to be phenomenal. I think Chet will be have some crazy numbers and have a lot to do with that. And I think Cleveland's defense is going to be terrific. And I think Mobley, it's just I'm picking guys I'm fairly confident other than Wemby because who knows how the Spurs defense is going to look. Overall, it'll be great when he's on the floor. Chet and Mobley just feel like guys that have room to grow, are already really good. I mean, Mobley finished 3rd 2 years ago, right? I think it was 2 years ago, and he's been in on all.
He was my pick before. 2 years ago.
So I'm just stealing your thunder here with Mobley. I just think those defenses will be great. They'll be the biggest reasons why. and everybody's tired of voting for Rudy Gobert. So I think that explains my ballot essentially.
The Chet one I struggle with because not that he won't be the most important part of the Thunder defense, but it feels like he could have equals, or that there'll just be so many players on that team that are as close to as impactful. I mean, one, if Isaiah Hartenstein is healthy enough and plays a ton of time and they're playing together, like that's how much credit do you give Chet in that scenario?
Yeah.
And then, because then he's probably not doing as much of the traditional big man stuff when they anchor defenses. And then just also you have Lou Dort on this team, you have Alex Caruso on this team. So that's him at 2 is just like, oh, okay. Like you really would have to, I have to watch the games, which we both know I never do.
Right.
And like really see Chet's just really like the one player that you can't lose on this best defensive team in the league. Like his case to being last year's Rudy Gobert to me is not as clean as Gobert's case to be Rudy Gobert again this year. And
that's a very good argument that Rudy Gobert is more likely to be like Rudy Gobert than Chet Holmgren.
Which is also why I don't have Gobert. I might have gotten I got a little, I guess, hesitant here of picking him again or putting him higher than 3rd, because I think that his job, and I want to make it clear, I'm not trying to move the goalpost, but I would not have said this last year. I do think his job just got harder with moving Karl Anthony Towns, like in some of those core lineups. If you're going to play a ton with Julius Randle, I don't know if he's going to have the same level of impact. He could win. It wouldn't shock me. Wemby at 2 is just, again, it's the same thing with the MVP. Are we going to be able to? He's the runaway favorite, so maybe. But when it comes to actually voting him to win, like putting him even defensive player of the year, it's he finished runner up. Like we remember it, but it's not. Oh man, it should have been. You're not having a huge argument. It's who should have won. Are we at the point where if the Spurs are below average defense, or if they're 15th or something in defense, we just look and say, well, they were in the 99th percentile with Wemby on the floor. So because we don't view defensive player of the year and MVP in the same context. Like those net rating swings are everything for MVP. When it comes to defensive player of the year, though, they don't carry the same weight for some reason.
Yeah, I think the Wemby case, as much as anything, is his block numbers are gonna be just like, who knows, right? And he's probably gonna average close to 2 steals, and we're gonna spend all year going, Wemby's on pace to be the first since whatever or ever probably. To have this many blocks, this many defensive rebounds, this many steals, like and the like shot deterrent stuff. There are going to be a million more clips of guys just like not trying him like that. I bet you that the San Antonio broadcast, like you remember how the screen assists became like the Utah broadcast could not stop talking about screen assists with Rudy Gobert a few years ago.
No, I don't remember.
There's gonna be a stat or like some term of art that comes around to explain or to quantify like when Wemby just like makes it so a guy who otherwise would have tried to shoot just doesn't. Like it just, I don't know, like a total deterrent stat or something like that. Like that will, I think the momentum is too great. I think you're making a mistake not having him number 1, even though I love Bam. That you do you.
So my case for Bam is, one, if you're worried about how the Miami Heat are going to perform at that end, they were 6th last year while dealing with injuries. Jimmy Butler missed a ton of time specifically. Now you have another year. Jaime Jaquez is better. So you lost Caleb Martin, but like you have Haywood Highsmith. So the overall defense should be just as good. I think this could have been the case already, but I don't even know that who is the best all-around defender in the NBA. Wemby might be the most dominant in like just as someone who is going to deter shots, but who is, you're talking about the most all-around defender, checks the most boxes, does so at a high level. I don't know that there's a strong case for anyone other than Bam. I think you could mention Mobley. I think you could probably mention Herb Jones. Again, talking all around because Herb Jones can do a lot of the big man stuff in addition to those conventional perimeter guy stuff. And that's just if you're going to be that guy, and I think he became that guy more than ever last year. And we saw him play more of he played more drop coverage. He did more of the traditional rim protecting stuff. And it was the best defensive season of his career. And I also, and maybe is this too guy yelling at clouds, he's going to be playing theoretically more meaningful games later in the season than Wemby is going to for being like there. And if that's not the case, then Wemby deserves to win. But like having to defend at a high level, carrying an elite defense, being the fulcrum of it for a team that's headed to the playoffs or the play-in versus a team that like if we're being honest, yeah, the Spurs might have a pretty high ceiling, but they have a pretty low floor too.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
So that was my case for Bam. I do think anyone that you named here, anyone on your ballot could win it. I struggle with Chet the most,
Yeah, I can
probably.
see that. Who?
Anybody?
So well, Gobert, obviously, if I was going to four, I would just have Gobert there and then probably Bam. Neither of us has mentioned Anthony Davis, who was like a pretty heavy factor in this award last year. And still I think Bam is just better in space, but like AD is definitely someone you would throw up there as like
Good
complete
call.
as a defender.
Yeah.
And with clearly like way better rim protection than Bam has. But yeah, like Bam is kind of a one of one in terms of guys who can play center credibly, but just guard any position in isolation. So, but AD is like, he's not easy to drive around. Like that's definitely one of the things that makes him such a consistent anchor of really good defenses.
And also, if we were to let's frame this case in the same way we would for MVP. If you were talking about, well, what are they without him? Like even when you look at Bam, even when you look at Wemby just having a healthy Devin Vassell, Steph Castle there, Jeremy Sohan, who I know is just he's not the premier wing checker, but there's like no supplementary defensive talent on the Lakers that you can just absolutely rely on night in, night out. Maybe Jared Vanderbilt if he's healthy, but he's not going to play a ton of minutes because of what he gives back on the offensive end too. Maybe Gabe Vincent if he's healthy. Also not someone who's a net plus on the, so how many minutes does he play? AD has that MVP type defensive player of the year argument where if the Lakers are good defensively, it's well, look at they're good defensively and look at what he's defending around.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say too, it hasn't always been the case that the on-off numbers have borne this out, but we know those can be noisy. The eye test for AD is just like teams play offense differently when he's in the game versus out.
Yeah.
Like it just fundamentally changes the types of shots that are like available. And so, he's way up there for me. We also, another name, I mean, won it 2 years ago, Jaren Jackson Jr. It's another sort of, you got to bet on Memphis getting back to where it was. But like, if you have Edie in the middle and Jaren Jackson gets to rove again, like that, he's done it before. Like it's not beyond him. We know that for a fact.
Do you think Giannis is still capable of winning this award?
Yeah, I think he's still capable. He'd be another guy that like, if these ballots went a little longer, you might throw up there just to be like, hey, he's like generationally great defensively for basically a decade. Like, but I don't think it's likely. Based on last year, maybe, but then if you're pricing in some moderate athletic decline, like maybe not, maybe he's not quite there anymore, but you got to include the name at least, right?
Do you know what could be an interesting one? Joel Embiid. Just if he plays in enough games in the sense of, okay, they've now, I would assume, lightened his offensive load. He's even talked about deferring to Tyrese Maxey. And look, we saw him being willing to do so in last year's playoffs at points. And now he can just be more locked in on a possession by possession basis. And because he's not one of the most versatile. I think there are teams, you go up against Boston, New York, these teams with like, I don't worry about Milwaukee as much, but like the teams with stretch bigs where you don't necessarily have someone that you can hide him on the perimeter. And New York might not even, like, you could put him on Josh Hart and maybe go that route. He is just dominant when he is on. Like, you talk about someone who changes the way that offenses play for the most part. He's there. I would never pick him because of the games played thing now, but I almost wonder now if you threw that out of the equation, it feels like his case becomes stronger because of how they've simplified, in theory, his life on the offensive end.
Yeah, like why can't he be a Brook Lopez type defensive player of the year candidate? Like that's the path for him. OG, I mean,
I wanted to ask you, who's the most likely non-big?
I mean, I guess. Well, if OG wins it, it might be because he's doing like big things.
Excuse me, Karl-Anthony Towns is the real defensive player of the year candidate in New York.
Okay. So if we just go guards, it's probably Jalen Suggs. I would think. Like, but I don't know how high you could realistically rank him, just because I mean it's just so hard. Like we did it with the Marcus Smart thing, but that had a lot to do with positional versatility too. I don't know that we're going to see a 6'4", 6'5" guy win it for quite some time. I mean, Herb's another one.
I think Herb's a 5, so he doesn't count for
Wait a minute.
question.
So you keep saying this, like I know that there was the stuff about like he's gonna do some center. Yeah, I don't know. He's gonna guard the bigs or to be the rim protector or whatever. Like, do you really think that's how they're gonna do it? Like that?
I
Do you
don't.
think that's legit?
I think it's semi legit. I'm more so trolling the Pelicans messaging as well as the
Yeah.
fans that are sipping on it of just like Herb is a 5. This isn't going to do anything to what Zion does type deal. And it's even if that's 100% the case, you don't want Herb Jones playing that much
Right.
center. Like you just like you.
If
So
only because like he's so good on the ball in space. Like you're just taking that
he
away. Like
and
you
you're
can't do
making him
both.
less versatile then
Yeah.
almost in there. But I will say, if we're talking perimeter players, I think so. The path to the perimeter player winning it would be the Herb Jones or OG Anunoby mold, where it's they can do other things like guarding up. And that if we're
Yeah.
gonna see so like Jalen Suggs, all defensive candidate for sure. But in terms of winning defensive player of the year, I would agree with you because it feels like he doesn't necessarily scale up all
Mhm.
that well. It would have to be, and this might even be a stretch, would be if Alex Caruso from last season played like 35 minutes a
Oh,
game on a team that was
interesting.
relevant.
Yeah.
I don't think Alex Caruso is going to play 35 minutes a game on this. It'd be really funny though if he ends up being like seems more valuable than Chet and ends up on this ballot. The Thunder just like are they just going to have the best defense? Like what is that?
Don't you? I think so. Don't you? I think that's the. I mean, Minnesota was so far ahead of the field last year that it's like, should you just pick them again, even if they're 5 or 10% worse? But the Thunder just their depth of great defenders is like, they are always going to have like, where are the weak links? Like
How
I mean,
many
like there's always going to be a relative weak link, but where's the actual weak link of the guys that are going to play?
how many players do they have who could feasibly make an all defense team in any given season? At least 3, maybe 4, right? I mean, if you want to include Hartenstein, maybe because I would include the locks as not to make it, but Caruso, Dort, and Chet could absolutely make an all defense team in any given season.
Yeah.
And if there are people who made a case for Shea last year, I wasn't one of them. You have J Dub and then Hartenstein. Like there were people who thought that he could have been that level of player. So I would say 4 is like maybe that's like they have 4 guys that could just at any given season make an all defense team. That's
Well, and even the guys you don't. I mean, Cason Wallace can guard. Like he's not going to play enough, and like he's fairly limited in who he can guard.
Aaron
but
Wiggins locked in.
Just let's keep saying
in
names.
addition to basketball at large.
Who else do we not mention?
Is there a perimeter player that we're forgetting? Because we have Herb, OG, and those are the only 2 perimeter players we mentioned, right?
Yeah, Herb, OG. I mean,
what about,
I don't think.
Oh, are you ready?
Yeah.
Amen Thompson.
Oh yeah, right. Both Thompsons. Asar Thompson too. Like just.
I mean, let's not pick any Pistons here. Let's not get carried away.
We haven't said Draymond Green. He's probably not going to play enough, but like just on reputation alone, he warrants a mention here. And if
I question his IQ at this stage because he thinks Kuminga's a 3. So I'm a little concerned.
You think his processing speed is slowed down a little bit? It's possible.
What I mean, if he played in 70 games, he'd
be an all defensive candidate. Like I think he's still, and especially if he played a lot more center, because I think that, everybody name me who's the last guy who's not actually a center that when they play, their coach wants to play them up, they're like, I'm good. I love it. Like everybody's like, I don't want to do this. Even Anthony Davis doesn't want to be a center. It's like a running joke for 10 years. Like I do think if Draymond played a lot, if he played 70 games, you'd have to have him on an all defensive team. I don't know if you'd ever have him on your DPOY ballot, but
what if he plays in 70 games, the Warriors win 30 and their defense is 17? Then you have to put him on
then he just gets it because how bad would they be without him?
Is there anyone else that you think do you hear my dogs? They're irate in the background.
They are not happy with the Draymond Green mention. It's pretty clear.
I think that's. Did we forget anyone? I mean, Jaden McDaniels as a perimeter player, would you consider him?
Yeah, he'd be on the list there of guys that we should mention, but just aren't going to win it. Yeah, no, I mean, normally you'd start throwing out the Kawhis and the Paul Georges and stuff, but I think
can anybody in Boston win it?
I mean, Derek White. We haven't said Derek White or Drew Holiday yet, but they're not. I mean, vote cannibalization, guards, like there's all these like tick the boxes that going against them. But if you're talking to the best perimeter defenders, you have to say those names.
I think that I don't think we're forgetting. We're probably forgetting someone egregious. I would imagine
per minute, Jonathan Isaac, but he's not. I mean, don't think he's going to play more than the 15.8 minutes he played last year.
Yeah, how dominant would he need to be in 16 minutes a game? Let's say he plays in 75, though. Like, you can't win that award if you're playing under
No, I don't
20.
think you can. I mean, what was it? Like with him on the floor last year, their defensive rating was like 102, which is like 6 points better than the Timberwolves. And when he was off, it was like 112, which would have been like 8th in the league. So it's just like when he's on the floor, you can make the case he's the most impactful defensive player in the league. It's just like it's about a quarter of the game is like where he maxes out. So how valuable is that?
I have a theoretical. This
Okay.
player plays in at least 28 minutes a game. His team has a top 5 defense. Could Derek Lively II make a push here?
Oh, that's fun. Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. I could definitely see that. Because like if the Mavs have a top 5 defense, it's gonna be because they get like elite, like him alone makes a good defense, interior stuff. Don't you think?
I would worry about like sort of the co-opt between him and Daniel Gafford to where it's, are they going to split the minutes basically down the middle again? Then you can't pick either one. Lively's certainly more versatile, but like they both bring sort of the verticality element. So I think he would have to, not only will the Mavs have to have an elite defense, but I think the bigger swing with him would be, well, how many minutes is this guy playing? Because there's so many different things they could do, not just play Gafford, but what if they want to play some PJ at the 5, or if they want Kleba as the lone big for like 2 minutes, 5 minutes a game, whatever.
Dwight Powell needs his PT. I think still.
Kawhi on the Clippers, you think he'll hit 65 games?
I think he's probably going to hit like 85.
I feel really bad for him, by the way. I make jokes about the availability, but it's not, I don't want him to be injured. And I do find it funny. Not funny. I find it odd how easily fans just assume that players don't want to play basketball. Like, you actually think that Kawhi is faking degenerative knees, or that he is somehow here through a fault of his own?
Who's making that case? Who are you?
I mean, you're not on Twitter. That's why.
So this is the problem. No serious person actually thinks that. Like, so get it out of your brain. It's not a serious person's opinion.
Well, even isn't a little. So it's like, how much blame do you assign to Joel Embiid for his health issues because people think that he hasn't put in the work? Off the court.
I mean, more than I would assign to Kawhi for his, just because of like all the stuff you would hear and read about Embiid's, like when he was younger, like his eating habits and his conditioning stuff. And it's just like, well, you're not helping yourself. I don't know if you're hurting yourself, but like you never heard anything about that type of thing with Kawhi, right? Like he's always in great shape and like puts the work in and stuff.
Well, people don't like him because he doesn't talk. He doesn't emote the way they want him to. And the helicopter story from a couple of years ago was objectively funny too. So
it's a boss move to just commute.
Grant, what is the next award?
You picked Rookie of the Year next.
I think you're wrong.
Oh,
damn it, you're right. What's your ballot look like?
All right, I got Zach Edey 1, Reed Shepherd 2, Zachary Reese-Shea was just like a shrug emoji, 3rd pick. I don't know. To me, like the Edey and Shepherd thing, I think Shepherd's going to be the best player in the class, but Edey just has like a red carpet rolled out for a huge role, like to be like a really conspicuously big reason why Memphis potentially is going to be good. So I just think it's easier for me to think or to imagine Edey winning it, even if like if you're giving me the next 5 years of both of these guys, I'm taking Reed Shepherd.
Yeah, so my ballot has Reed at number 1 because I think that he's just going to be by far and away the most dominant rookie. I worry about the opportunity that he'll have, as you kind of outlaid. I have Edey 2. I've watched him and I see it, and I'm just assuming he's going to play a bunch of minutes for a good team, and that's part of what intrigued me so much about Case and Wallace last year. I didn't pick him for Rookie of the Year, but I mean, and also Chet, of course, and Wemby was not on a good team, but is there a chance that like he has so many people are kind of penciling him in where it feels like he's a consensus top 2 choice, but there's like the real potential for this to look egregious 6 months from now, right?
Well, so I think it was either a hot take or like a bold prediction where I made the case that Shepherd's going to win it. And like to make that argument, you have to say he's going to be so good. I think what I said, it was probably a hot take. Like he's just going to be undeniable. So where all this stuff about like The Rockets have 17 guys that are 23 and under that all need to play. They also have Fred VanVleet, who's really, really good. So the opportunity won't be there. The case you just have to make is he'll be so good and so valuable on both ends of the floor that he just has to play. And he plays enough to where maybe it's even more than Edey does, because rookie bigs just don't tend to have high minute totals. So like it could look bad if, Amen Thompson just needs to play 35 minutes a night and Jalen Green is incredible and like the just minutes aren't there. But like I don't think picking Reed Shepherd first for rookie of the year is ever going to look ridiculous, just because we're going to flash forward and he's like, how is he not going to be one of the best players in this class, like down the line? I just don't see it.
I meant more so through the lens of Edey, to where it's, what if he can't log a ton of minutes for a good Grizzlies team? Not because he's bad, but it's just they're better off with Brandon Clark out there, or they're better off with Santi Aldama, or they're better off with Jaren Jackson Jr. as the lone big just for this season.
I mean, in that sense, the preseason and summer league, because in which he played like one game, right? Edey did, are doing a lot of work, because the profile of a fairly immobile big center who doesn't stretch the floor having a big role in today's NBA is like who is that? That's especially young guys. Like, I don't know, you have to look at Lively, I guess, but Lively is such a different caliber of athlete. The way he moves is just much more suited to the modern game. Edey's like, if Edey does really well, I think it's going to be really fun, because he'll be like such a throwback bruiser, just I'm bigger than you type of player. And we don't have a lot of those guys. But yeah, totally. Like we could know in the second week of the season, like he just can't, like he's just a traffic cone, like in space. He just can't move laterally enough to like be out there for big minutes. And the Grizzlies could say like, we'll just play Jaren Jackson at center. Like we're good with that. So yeah, totally. He there's risk there too. I made it out like, oh, it's guaranteed, but yeah, there's risk for sure.
No, I think you framed it as it feels like him or Shepherd will be the picks, and Edey might be a lot of the defaults, because I think the opportunity is more etched in stone for him. I just think Reed Shepherd's going to be so good that by Jalen Green, as you kind of mentioned. So I have Cody Williams as third. A lot of that's opportunity. A lot of that's also, I had him number one on my board. I probably would have Reed Shepherd number one if I was redoing it. I think there's going to be more to his offensive game. A lot of people think that he like won't have necessarily the on-ball kind of speed or versatility. I really don't know if he does, but I kind of see the skeleton of someone who can, and I think those types of touches will be there for him just based off what this Jazz team is. I think he might be able to shine on the defensive end. Taylor Hendricks and Walker Kessler do a lot of heavy lifting, but when it kind of comes to having to defend some of the top tier assignments on the outside, that'll fall on him. But I think, honestly, this is a class when you kind of factor in, well, how do you feel about this player? And then how do you feel about this player's role? You could probably you could talk me to Donovan Clingan if Portland decides to like consolidate their big man rotation at some point.
Yeah, I mean, he could have for sure, like that. He's down my ballot too, on the theory of like, if you trade Ayton and Robert Williams, then just hand him the job and see what happens. And then you could have like a Walker Kessler type case, where he's probably not going to win it, but he's up there. Trying to think who else. What do you think about Khalil Ware? If he or I've seen Khalil and Khalil. I don't know which it is. I think maybe I said it wrong. I think it might be.
I think it's I've been saying it Khalil. I could look up the phonetic pronunciation.
I think it's anyway. Where I think it's Khalil, like kind of like the Superman thing.
For what it's worth, Basketball Reference has it as Khalil.
Okay. If he ends up getting a starting job at some point in the season, I don't know how likely that is anymore. There was a lot of buzz about that. He's I don't think he can win it, but he's someone that like might make an all rookie team. Just want to throw his name out there. I guess I should justify Risache. I think he's got the opportunity.
I should justify the number one pick being on the rookie.
Isn't that weird? Like, what if that doesn't tell you about this draft class? I don't know what does. Maybe there's a little Brandon Miller theory where it's like, as a prospect, he was viewed as like a low ceiling. He can do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Not going to be great at like the things you want from that position. Maybe he's got a little more on ball stuff than we think. Like,
but does he get a chance to show it? Is that he would almost, so he has to be great in areas people typically don't focus on, to where it's like when it comes to rookie bigs, it's, we recognize how valuable they are in defense. So he's going to have to be an exceptional perimeter defender and then an exceptional shooter and cutter and floor runner in transition. And like, none of those are traditionally things that what gets people rookie of the year is, look at his assists, or look what he did on the ball. Look at what he did as the defensive anchor down low. That's not to say he shouldn't win if he has the type of season. I don't know what his role is going to be on a Hawks team that has an incentive to not lose.
Right. Well, the thing is that all those things you mentioned, like those are the things he's pretty good at, right? Or theoretically is pretty good at, is the on the margin stuff. So maybe if he's like a star in his role, as a cutter, as a spot up shooter, as a defender, he finishes third. Like he can't. I don't see a path to winning it. It just feels this is guarantees will be wrong. Like there will be
Yeah.
someone that crashes the Edie Shepherd
Well,
twosome here.
are we sleeping on any of the Wizards rookies here, where
Just
it's
sheer opportunity.
Sar? I mean, plays a 4 or 5, whatever. Bub Carrington might be a nice sleeper if they're going to give him the reins of the offense for at least 20 minutes a game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it. Yeah, we probably went too far without mentioning Sar, just because he's got to play, right? One, so he's got that over like Shepard, for example, or even Edie. Like there are scenarios where they don't play a lot. Sar is just going to play the whole year if he's healthy. So maybe that gets the counting numbers up to where he has to be on the ballot.
Do you know who could have an interesting case if what he's doing in the preseason holds? Not Dalton Connect. Sorry, Lakers fans.
Ryan Dunn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if he's just playing the way he is, he's going to be in closing lineups.
Yeah.
And if you're in that for a top 5 Western Conference team as a rookie, you probably have some, he only averaged 18 minutes a game. I'd probably just pick him at that point, though.
Mm-hmm. I feel like if we had done this, I don't know, a month or two ago, we would have mentioned Rob Dillingham just on the theory of he's going to run the second unit. He's going to have, might average 14 points a game. And now it's kind of looking like that role has already shrunk. So just, shout out to what used to be Rob Dillingham's fringe rookie of the year case that doesn't exist anymore.
There's already a swell of Yves Missi is better than Daniel Tice. And so what if he ends up starting at center for the Pet? Like they decide to start him by the end of the year.
I mean,
I'm
not out of the question. Daniel Tice has not looked good in preseason. That was one of the things I was watching some tape and reading up. It's just like, no one thought this was going to work, but it's really not going to work, I don't think, with him in the middle.
Do you think this is a team that should? I mean, there are two teams that could theoretically give huge opportunities to their rookies. I just don't think they're going to. But Modest Buzelis in Chicago, and then Tijan Salon in Charlotte. I think Charlotte's like pretty deep, and while they are rebuilding, it's okay. The Miles Bridges, if Mark Williams is healthy, you have Nick Richards, Grant Williams. So he feels more of like, he'll be a main part of what they're doing post trade deadline or post All-Star break or something.
Yeah.
The Bulls don't really have an excuse for not playing Buzelis a ton, though, when you look at the makeup of their roster.
Yeah, I was going to say for both of those guys, they just feel like they're really not ready yet, even if they did have the opportunity, which they should, right? At least after the trade deadline, they should both be starting and playing a ton. But like they both feel kind of a long ways away. Buzelis looked interesting though in some of those summer league games. Like I could see it. Who else are we?
Too much of what he does is predicated working on the ball, and I don't know that he's going to have. Like Tijan Salon, if he got a shit ton of minutes and like the way he's been popping threes and just hustling down the floor, if he was playing, that wouldn't shock me. You know what we haven't mentioned? So Ron Holland, we haven't mentioned. That's something about taking up. He's just not going to have the opportunity. I think that's been pretty clearly laid out. What about Steph Castle? What is the pathway for him doing it?
I don't know if the offensive game is just anywhere close to good enough to get real consideration yet. You know what I mean? Like And really, like, I could see him just being marginalized because you brought in Chris Paul to join Trey Jones, and like those guys are just going to be on the ball. So Castle, who might like the way for Castle to do it would be he gets a ton of on ball reps, and it like we leave this season thinking like he actually is going to be the point guard on this team going forward.
Right.
I just don't know if we're going to get a chance to like sort of test that theory this season.
Would you care to guess which award is next?
Oh, I'll guess. I think we're good there. I suspect you went with I think you went most improved next.
Wow, you're 4 for 4? We're only on the 4th award. We have problems.
Yeah.
70 minutes in.
Unfortunately, this one is, we don't need to make this one crazy long, I don't think.
Well, most improved player, so my turn to go first. You're a poser. You do not have Jalen Williams as number 1. I have J-Dub number 1, Wemby number 2, and then Jalen Suggs number 3. And this is an edification. I did in our like hot takes pods. I said Jalen Suggs was going to win it. And the more I thought about how I feel about him doing more on ball stuff in Orlando's offensive ecosystem, either one, don't feel great about it, or two, really don't think it's going to come to fruition in the regular season. So I backed off a little bit there, but I still, as you can tell, have plenty of Jalen Suggs stock.
I mean, I fully support Jada being number one for you. It is the thinking that, because I think, again, I think it was a hot take, but I sort of believe it anyway, that like he's going to be an all-star this year or play at an all-star level. Is that a big enough jump from where he is for you? Or are you thinking the jump's going to be even bigger?
I think the jump's going to be bigger to where he's going to average over 20 points a game. And what was he at? 19.7 last year. So it's like that'll tick up. But I think the two things, I think people are going to kind of start to understand his defensive value a little bit better this year after watching him for the first two seasons. And I really think the two things will be he'll continue to level up the self creation. And so let's say he's only averaging 22 points or something. So it's just like what was he? He was at 19 last year, right?
I think it was like 19. It was 19, 4.5 assists, 4 rebounds with like a 62% true shooting or something stupid like that.
I just think there's a chance he could be more efficient. And they were already doing this when Josh Giddey was there. It's like, you're going to run these units without Shea. That's the default now. I mean, Isaiah Hartenstein's injured to start the year, and that's not Alex Caruso's MO. It's not Cason Wallace's MO. So like who else is running? Who's your backup? Like who's your not backup to Shea, but like who is your backup primary playmaker? Who's your second best playmaker on this team? Maybe it's Hartenstein, but like in terms of running the stuff end to end, it's Jalen Williams, isn't it? Who am I missing?
Oh no, it's him. That's just, I mean, and that was, I feel like we've gone so many laps on this, not you and I, but just like he failed as a secondary creator in the postseason, and like that's what the Thunder needs. Like, all right, give him an off season and like another year of like progress as he ages. And like I never really understood the Thunder need to go out and get that other creators. Like, how about just give this guy who keeps getting better by leaps and bounds like one more summer to prove he can do it. Like, I don't have any doubt that he's going to be a phenomenal like secondary creator with SGA, and like the second unit that he runs will be good. Like, I just think so I'm just making your case for you and making me not having him on my ballot even stupider. But I can see it.
The case, we both had him on our ballots last year. Did you pick him to
probably
win? You probably did.
Probably.
But like the case against him would be, can he make a jump that's meaningful enough relative to him working off such a high baseline right now? And I think he can, because look at the jump he made from year 1 to year 2. I'm not expecting the same size, but kind of the self-created directionality part of his offensive game when it came to scoring. It was, is he going to be able to expand that? And then last year he's hitting step backs. There's like more directionality to his dribble drives. So I would expect him. Yeah, it's probably harder to continue that trajectory, but even if it's, I don't want to say marginal, but this can be gradual improvement now. And if you're improving off of that super high baseline, I think it's going to count for something.
Yeah. And I think the narrative aspect of the voting could be there for him too, because the Thunder will be so good. And there'll be a lot of like, well, we already know about SGA. Like, who else can we focus on if we're like doing our, our long forms or our report? Yeah, sure. It could be Chet. I don't know. I mean, maybe he should be on here. So you have Wemby second. I have Wemby first. We've already talked about him enough. It's like the numbers are going to be insane. Supposedly put on 25 pounds. I'm never, ever going to believe that a human can put on that much weight in that little time. I don't care how tall you are.
And first of all, it's not safe. And even unless it's water weight, like I've done the gain 10 pounds in one day thing when I've gone on like eating binges, but there's no, even if you were just juicing, there's like 25 pounds in 2 months. You can't do it.
It's not possible. So miss me with all that stuff. Everybody that's reporting that. I have another Jalen second. I have Jalen Johnson second. And it's kind of a two-pronged thought process. One is massive improvement last year. And I think it's like people will catch up to that because nobody watched the Hawks, and he's going to be even better this season, partly because DeJounte Murray is gone, and just the opportunities I think for him are really going to be there. Whether that's as like a pick and roll partner for Trae Young, or as just the guy you give the ball to as like a second, we talk about secondary creators a lot for this award, but he might just be someone that, is more than a transition finisher, more like he can pass. Like there's a real path towards like 22, 5 and 7 or something like, or maybe even more rebounds than that, but like 22 and 5 is totally plausible with a bunch of other stuff. And that's going to seem like a huge leap to everybody that didn't really pay that much attention to him last year. The injury, kind of kept him more under the radar for most improved than he probably should have been. And I have Jonathan Kuminga third, one, to stay on brand, and two, because I do think it does look to me from the preseason like he is going to let it rip from three when he's open. And that's just going to juice the numbers. I have major questions about his defense. I don't know how he doesn't finish with more than 20 a game. And, he'll be efficient because he just gets so many dunks. He set the franchise record for dunks last year. If he actually improves defensively, then we're talking about like a real like all-star level player. But I just think the numbers will be there. It's going to be more of like a cosmetic improvement because opportunity, potentially a contract year if he doesn't get an extension. So that's always motivating. So I like him at number 3.
Yeah, he's interesting. I almost would want to gravitate toward pods a little bit more because I think he's going to have to show them more playmaking. But I see
You
the
hate
vision.
second-year players, though.
I broke that for Jada. I said that I was being stupid about it. And so people will say that as me being inconsistent. I call that evolving.
I call it growth. You've grown.
So I have the Wemby stuff is tough because, okay, if his numbers go up, does that count as enough? Like, what is the area of improvement where, okay, I think if he plays more minutes and doesn't improve a damn thing, the counting stats might warrant him being most improved player. I have him too. So I'm about to make the case is, okay, he cuts down on the turnovers and there's there's fewer, he's taken like 23 footers with 19 seconds left on the shot clock and he's being more of a play finisher because he can now in certain instances. I don't where does the improvement come on defense for him?
I mean,
fewer fouls, like a little, I don't like.
Yeah, I don't. It has to be on offense somewhere. I think he could get his, like, if he shoots in the mid to high 30s on decent volume from three, like that's massive. Because I think his 2-point finishing is going to be substantially improved just because Chris Paul's there. He's gotten stronger to whatever degree you think that's real. He'll just be a better finisher. But like if the 3-point shooting becomes a real thing,
Yeah, because he shot way better on pull-ups than catch and shoots last year. So
which is like not how it's supposed to work. So that would be because we, like, for Suggs, for example, last year, like he actually gained a new skill. Like he could shoot threes and he couldn't before. Like that's where if you have Wemby actually add a skill or two and the numbers spike, which they will, then it's like, well, he should just win it.
Yeah, I'd be with you there. With Suggs too, so what's the skill he could add? Like, it feels like maybe last year could have been his best chance at winning it. I think if the assist numbers come up and you look at it and it's, like he ran a bunch more pick and rolls and it improved the offense. Like he scored not just more points per possession, but he's making better passes. Like, can he be more of the methodical, slowed down creator? I still think he can be. I'm just curious. There's been a lot of Anthony Black momentum there. And so I'm worried that they're going to get too far away from the Jalen Suggs experimentation. I also just worry that the spacing still isn't going to be good enough for anyone there to kind of make a leap. I still have him third because I'm a really big believer in, like, the more I think about them, like, should he be third? Like, his defensive impact might go down because of KCP being there a little bit, but I just think he has shown that he can get better in wholesale arenas, and I would expect that to continue.
Yeah, it's just easier to bet on a guy that's already sort of shown you that he can put the work in and just improve something that he couldn't do before. I have Jada just in my honorable mention, obviously. Evan Mobley is someone I thought about just because I've obviously picked him for, a way up in defensive player of the year and all that stuff. Like, he has, like, we've talked about it on another pod, like, what if he shoots 5 or 6 threes a game and, hits them at a decent clip? There's your new skill. And he's just at an age where, like, an all-star jump seems totally on the table. So I don't know if he can win it. I don't know what he'd have to do to win it, considering he's already been, like, fairly highly decorated with, like, DPOY consideration and stuff like that. Made an all defensive team. So his bar is kind of high too. But I could just see him taking a big step. It just feels like about the right time for him. And it's not like it's a mystery what he needs to improve at this point, because we've been focusing on it for so long. So, like, if he's a way better facilitator, shooter, more decisive offensive player, then it's like, yeah, well, that's what we've been asking for. That here you go. Here's your award.
Could you see Scotty Barnes getting back into this discussion? What if he's averaging like 25 and 8?
Yeah, it's kind of the Jalen Johnson theory of, like, he was just in it last year and then didn't play enough. I kind of feel like Barnes is already regarded as too good. You know what I mean? Like the numbers could get there. If it's 25-8, then
when's the last time like someone who's already made an all-star team won most improved player? I'm sure it's happened, but when's the last time? I mean,
man, yeah, I don't know.
Normally they're kind of associated with, oh, this player ascended into all-star territory.
Yeah. Like, well, Jalen Johnson last year is like definitely a type of like nothing. And then, oh my God, like not all-star level. That's one type. And then the other one is you go from where Johnson was last year, for example, to an all-star thing. I don't know if there's been an all-star that's won. I guarantee someone has won most improved after making an all-star game. But then you're talking about like an all
like
NBA
in a
caliber
previous season. So Larkin made the all-star game when he won it, right? But that was his first all-star appearance that year. So I'm talking about like, this. Remember the Steph case during his unanimous MVP season?
I think I made that case.
Yeah, I'm sure you did, which I don't think it was an unreasonable one. People have made the case for Luka before. I even saw some people make a Joel Embiid case last year. I thought that was interesting.
I mean, it's not wrong, but like that feels like that's just not what that award
is meant to. But there's the school of thought where it's harder to improve at a superstar level than it is at a different baseline. Two other names that I kind of considered, and I'm still regret not putting one of these in the top 3. So there's Cade Cunningham, not the one I regret, but I could see it. And I really just LaMelo Ball could win this thing.
Oh, that's fun. There's your previous layoff. Trey Murphy, someone I just want to throw out there. That's kind of more of an opportunity thing, I think. He's hurt now, but
you think Brandon Ingram's backup could win both of them?
I think the guy that finally gets Brandon Ingram traded. Who else are we not thinking of?
There's probably a ton. There's what would the betting odds say? So we have, do we name all? Oh, so Josh Giddey's fourth in betting odds.
I mean, that's just going to be a numbers thing, right? Like I guess I could see it. I can understand why he's up high.
So we mentioned of the top, so that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Of the top 8, we mentioned 7. So that should make us feel good. Emmanuel Quickly is at 9th. That's an interesting one. I don't see it.
I could see Barrett having a better chance as like based on what he showed for half a season last year. He looked like a different player. If he does that for a full year, that would be something.
Kobe White's on the list again. I have trouble seeing that with Josh Giddey in the fold.
Yeah.
Ooh, Paolo Banchero is a in one. But that's another case of, he already made the all-star team. I'm not saying he can't win it, but that's what if he just has 63 true shooting and is averaging like 27 points a game?
Well, what if let's stick with the Magic. What if Franz just does all the same stuff he did last year, but shoots 40% from 3? Like he's going to make an all-star team. Like that's a jump.
LaMelo, we talked about. Jalen Green is that? Just he looks pretty good in preseason. So does that count towards his case?
I mean, I guess. I don't know. I that's a hard one.
That's like the classic, working off. I know he finished the season better, but that's the classic, this dude was so bad.
He won't have the lowest true shooting in the league. So it'll be like bottom 10, and that'll be
so Pods is on this list too. I could see it. Denny Avdia, that's I think his best shot was last year.
That's a year late, I feel like. What about, I mean, we've already mentioned a lot of second year players, but either of the Thompsons, I think, like could just have a huge leap.
What's going on with Asar Thompson right now? Like, is he even going to be playing? Like, what's going on with him?
I don't know. Yeah, like Ron Holland scares me there because they could just look at Ron Holland and say, like, you kind of do a lot of the Asar Thompson stuff, except you have like a more projectable offensive future.
Well, I mean, just like Asar Thompson's been out, and we just don't. It's just not like the clarification of, we know Amen Thompson. It seems like he's going to play, but it doesn't seem like the blood clot issue might be resolved, and so that would be my.
I didn't know that. I thought we were good to go there.
Unless my information's outdated. Any other names from this? Cam Thomas, that also feels a year late. I guess if he improves as a passer. Anthony Simons, that feels egregious.
That's weird. Why would that?
Jaime Jaquez is semi-interesting. Chet Holmgren, and then the other two, the final two that are on the betting odds list, Grady Dick and Derek Lively II. I'm very what Derek Lively I think has the easier path, but I'm almost just thinking, what does improved to look like? Like he's not going to have a chance to meaningfully expand his offensive usage in Dallas.
I mean, if he wins Defensive Player of the Year, you think he is, then I could see it. Grady Dick has just won. Like, I don't know. Like, he's got to shoot 42% from three and average 5 assists. Like, I guess like somebody's gonna have to do it in that 5th starter spot for the Raptors. I could see
If
it.
I was confident he was going to be healthy, I will continue to throw Devin Vassell into this. Oh, you know what we haven't mentioned, and I'm wondering if this is there's too many guys in front of him in the offensive pecking order. Keegan Murray.
Yeah.
Like the defense, if he continues to improve on defense, and just like the offensive numbers uptick, as it'll probably be more of, okay, he never has the ball in his hands based off who's around him. That's fine. That would not surprise me.
That's the hard part, is just like, where do it's hard to imagine he averages more points than last year. Like it's a numbers game. Like, where do the shots come from?
Well, you know how it happens. They wind up trading Monk to get in, like, fill a bigger need.
Yeah,
that's
possible. That's possible.
Anybody else?
I think Keegan Murray's gonna be a significantly improved player. I just don't think he can win it. He's not gonna have the numbers.
The nicest thing I think you've ever said about the Kings is Keegan
listen,
Murray's not going to win this award, but I'm not opposed to you talking about him right now.
Have you seen, man, there's some the De'Aaron Fox stuff. I feel like people are too low on Fox right now too. Yeah, anyway. All right, that covers most improved. I'm going to continue my streak here that your next award is 6th man of the year.
I feel like you're right. I hate you. 6th man of the year. Your ballot, Grant. I cheated on this one for anyone who's not watching. You're welcome.
I approved it. I got Dante DiVincenzo 1, Malik Monk 2, Deuce McBride 3.
Number 3 is, you won my heart with that one. I don't know if that's what you were trying to do, but
it's an opportunity thing. Like, who else is playing off the bench in New York?
Precious?
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm not going to put him on my ballot. I mean, like,
my problem with a Knicks player winning 6th man of the year is just like, is Tibbs going to play? Like, especially now, the way the roster's built, like all the starters are going to average 49 minutes a game, right? So
yeah, well, so will Deuce. Deuce went like a month averaging 44 or whatever it was.
True.
Yeah, he'll get his opportunity. So that'll juice his averages. He just needs to not have to start because of injury for enough games to qualify. I
was going to ask you about your Dante pick, because I considered him. He's number 2 on my ballot, so it's not like we were far away. What is, like, how do you separate him and the Naz Reid? Like, what is the case for him winning it over Naz Reid again?
Well, this is the problem, is I had Naz Reid on my ballot initially, and then we talked, and like, I just was like, I can't have 2 Timberwolves, so I just picked DiVincenzo. The thought for him is, I think there's several ways for him to potentially have a huge impact. One is just the high volume 3-point shooting that showed up last year with the Knicks. 2 is like starting to look like the Wolves are going to put the ball in his hands a little bit more on second units. Now, Julius Randle probably will get some time there too. The way things get staggered, like maybe Dillingham, like, figures it out or is enough of an impact guy at some point where you don't have DiVincenzo on the ball. Cause I don't love him there. I don't think that's really playing to his biggest strengths. And then defensively, like, he can be really disruptive and kind of give that second unit a real, like, you have him out there with Alexander Walker. There's going to be some chaos happening defensively. So like, I can just feels like he's positioned really well he has a lot of paths to winning this. And then Monk is just going to be a great scorer off the bench who closes, just because that's what he does.
No, he's not. There's no way he closes. So they're going to close. Is DeRozan watching from the bench?
No. There's got to be a way to get him out there. So you just go.
So it's going to be Keegan Murray, DeMar DeRozan, Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox, and Sabonis?
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, or they trade him and he goes, well, then I guess if he gets traded, he's probably starting somewhere else. That's how I win it. He comes off the bench enough games for the Kings to qualify. They trade him at the deadline, and he averages like 34 a game down the stretch, and his numbers are undeniable. I don't know. I just think, well, actually, no, I'm leaving Monk there. I'm leaving him there. You to go to your ballot, because you've got a doozy at number 1.
So with Dante, though, very quickly, my whole thing is it feels like, I don't know how often they'll go to this, but doesn't it, when you're talking about him versus Naz Reid, doesn't it feel like he might be more likely to close games right now? Because what you could do is, you could put Naz Reid in for Julius Randle, but you can't put Naz Reid in for Mike Conley. You could do both. Like, DiVincenzo could just go in for Julius Randle when you close with Gobert as the lone big, or you could just put him in for Mike Conley and use Ant as your primary point guard, because you have, because Julius Randle's creation, Mike Conley's not as important in theory there.
Or you don't close with Gobert sometimes too. And DiVincenzo's out there with, I don't know who, maybe it's Randall at the 5, maybe it's Reed.
He's probably out there with Nas at that point, though.
Yeah, that's
There are
true.
more. I get where there are more ways it feels like for DV to close than
Yeah.
there is for Nas Reed at this point.
And really, like, are we sure Conley's gonna hold up for a full season? DiVincenzo might just start and close a fair amount of games
He also
potentially.
just, I know there was a lot of time spent on different things the Wolves could use, but like their wing shooting last year was like a very real deficit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he fills that better than Karl-Anthony Towns did, who was a big. Julius Randle's a big and isn't the best shooter anyway. So I considered putting him number one. I almost kind of, out of principle, though, I'm going with Amen Thompson. I kind of don't think he's going to be coming off the bench by year's end. This is a situation where something happened with a trade with Şengün or Jalen Green, and it opens the door for him. But if he's going to come off the bench for 40 plus games this season, and Ime Udoka said they're already going to continue to roll with the starting lineup from last year, which is bad news for Thompson and Shepherd, probably a little, like in terms of minutes. He is already so dominant defensively. He showed that he has some value away from the ball offensively. He can do things as a screener around the dunker spot. And there's still, I don't know if they have the spacing or the, I guess, the touches to go around, but like this is someone who came out of the draft as, oh, he's a 6'7" point guard.
Right.
So there's more meat on the bone as a passer. And I think it would be a disservice to the Rockets and Thompson for them not to explore it more this year than they did last year. And to everyone's defense, they could have explored it more last year, but he was injured to start the season. And so that, of course, impacts how you're going to run your team. That feels like this feels like a justifiable pick, but also a very high risk one on my end.
Yeah, he's got guys in front of him, and that's the problem. But like his breadth of potential ways to get into the lineup is just like, it's significant enough to where it's like he just has to get in there. It's like for significant minutes. What, like, well, we need defense. All right, put him in. Oh, we need a guy who can just finish everything from the dunker spot. Put him in. Oh, we need a point guard. Okay, he can do, like, I mean, if he gets any semblance of a jumper, then it's just like we're trading Jalen Green tomorrow, right? Like we need him in the lineup. So I like that pick. It's bold. I didn't have him. I didn't think about him. I'm a little jealous. So explain your, I understand your number 3 spot here because I struggled with this one.
Yeah. So by the way, I initially had Norman Powell here, but the Kawhi injury just makes it that I'm assuming he's going to start way too many games.
I think that's why I don't have him on mine, is I assume he's going to be a starter.
So I have Bogdan Bogdanović or Dyson Daniels because I assume like Bogdanović is going to be viewed as the starter, but you just I could see Quinn Snyder changing that up or not going to it at all and wanting that to come off the bench. I'm probably sipping. I've always liked Dyson Daniels, but I've always been pretty upfront that I don't think he's going to be a good shooter. In the preseason, 38% on over 5 attempts per game from deep, Grant. And he is, I can't remember who they were playing that I was watching, but he was letting them, like, he caught it twice, like, and he just let it rip. And so I'm not buying into it, but if he's going to be, and defenses aren't going to defend it because, spoiler alert, they didn't defend those attempts that I'm talking about. So if he's going to, like, if the floater still falls, if he can hit or take like 3 threes a game and he shoots, makes one of them, he shoots 33%. And then the defensive potential there, he's going to be asked to shoulder a big responsibility. I also think he low key, there's a lot of different routes they could go here with secondary ball handlers, but like, who is the backup floor general, especially if Bogdanović is starting? Dyson Daniels is going to get a lot of those reps. He got some of them in New Orleans. And so that was my thought process, is I think the opportunity will be there and that he'll also be good enough.
Who do you think should start if you're trying to just be the best, do the best thing for the Hawks? Should it be Daniels or Bogdanović?
Ooh, it should be Bogdanović.
Okay. I think I agree, just because you need somebody, because Trey's going to have the ball. So you need more off ball shooting value. Right. And then Daniels can just be on the ball as a backup. Right. Is that like kind of what you're,
because unless you're going to have, because if you have, let's say if you have Daniels on the court, and then Capella and Johnson are on the court too, it's okay. Well, Daniels isn't going to be used as like a screener or anything. And so then his value is basically as a cutter. And are you going to, like, you're already getting not too dicey, but like you want Jalen Johnson and Clint Capella. Like, you don't want anyone to cannibalize, like, oh, we need them to like occupy the same space as those dudes away from the ball. So I think that makes the most sense. Now, if you were really trying to build the best defense possible, you also look at it through the lens of, I know Bogdanović is bigger than people realize. You're probably starting a rookie. I mean, isn't there a world though where like Risache could come off the bench and Daniels and Bogdanovich are starting. Does that make any sense? I probably don't think so because you still run into the off ball, like the on ball conundrums. But yeah, I don't feel too confident in this pick. Like if Bogdanovich, you told me was going to come off the bench for like 50 games, I might just pick him.
I would pick no, if he were guaranteed to not be a starter, I would probably it would be between him and DiVincenzo for me. And I probably would put him first just because I think he should have won it last year. Like I think he was the best guy off the bench consistently last season.
Anyone else? I could also go through the odds of 6 man of the year too to see if there's like
just to make sure we don't. I mean, so we said I just talking about mine. I had Bogdanovich as an honorable mention. Again, would have had him higher. Naz Reid, obviously.
For sure.
I think Buddy Hield looks like he's kind of in the perfect spot to just come off the bench and be the guy that is expected to take almost every shot offensively. Again, we don't know. He might start. Who knows? It's that position is pretty fluid, but I think he's going to have the pretty like the standard 6-man case where, you know, who has the highest points per game among guys that don't start. Like he could definitely be in that conversation too.
There's also Karis LeVert is high up on the betting odds list.
Pretty standard. Yeah.
CJ McCollum sounds like he's going to start though. So picking anyone from like, cause you could pick Trey Murphy, but I really do think he's going to be a starter by season end.
I think McCollum should come off the bench, but you just can't do it because of the salary and the experience, like, right. Cause like there's your second unit.
Also, if we're being super honest, Brandon Ingram should probably come off the bench.
Like you on the same theory, right? Same theory of like, he's not going to shoot threes, so let's have him just run the offense as a against backups type of thing.
Jaime Jaquez Jr., that's a good one. I do kind of feel like there's a chance he would start games, but if they want to go with Jovic or even Collier Ware next to Bam instead, Jordan Clarkson, I don't know if I could get there after last season, but that's pretty standard.
He was a pretty standard annual pick for this.
Bobby Portis, standard. Benedict Mathurin, I don't know if I can get there.
That's the type of play. That's the type of player he is, I think.
Both Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein are on here. And it's just, I need to know, you could, first of all, you need to tell me which one is going to come off the bench for more games. And then even then, I'm just like, you could talk me into Isaiah Joe or Case and Wild. There's just going to be too many. They have too much depth for someone to win 6 man of the year, as stupid as that sounds.
And if Caruso is starting, isn't Dort coming off the bench? Like you're not going to start both of them, are you? Well, maybe you are.
Well, I was thinking, are we sure? Like, I know they started Isaiah Hartenstein, but that was going to be their permanent starting 5. I guess they gave him $30 million a year. Because couldn't you make the case for Isaiah Hartenstein if Alex Caruso's starting to be 6 man of the year?
Oh yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah, that's another situation where you could pick a couple guys that are so deep.
Josh Hart is on here. That's weird. Who are the Knicks starting instead of Josh Hart?
Josh Hart. That's who's starting.
Peyton Pritchard getting a nice little Celtics bump. Oh, this is, I don't know who is setting money on fire, but Russell Westbrook is on this list.
That's just like a public bet.
Ayo Dosunmu as a dark horse would be interesting.
Yeah, I could see it. What about, there's got to be a Sun, like it doesn't one of like Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal need to be coming off the bench? Either of those. I mean, more so Grayson Allen, because he could just come in and, shoot 47% from 3.
That's a good one. And what is the path to him starting? Is it they decide to KD at the 5, or you're not going to start Tyus?
Oh yeah, that's the only way it happens, right? Yeah, so he's definitely coming off the bench, right? Because it'll be Tyus, Beal, Booker, KD.
He's not on here though. I find that interesting.
There's your long shot bet. I think. He starts too many because one of those guys is hurt every.
Yeah. Spencer Dinwiddie's on here, but Grayson Allen is not.
Not a good bet there.
TJ McConnell's on here. This is Trey Murphy's on here, of course. This is like tough too. Sort of like the Rockets. This is why I was also hesitant to pick Amen Thompson. Is that they might have too many options, but Cam Whitmore's on here. And then Reed Shepard's coming off the bench too. My Amen Thompson pick is looking shakier.
I mean, everything with the Rockets is just still, they have too many young guys that they're all just kind of like chipping away at each other's value.
At this point, they got all the picks. They have all this flexibility and like, they're just stacked everywhere. They're not as good, but so how many minutes are these guys going to play?
Yeah.
So I picked 2 Rockets to win awards so far this year. and they're both Rockets players that I'm concerned about how many minutes they're going to actually log.
Well, other than like Şengün and I guess Van Vliet, like who are you not concerned about there? I guess
I think Jabari's going to play.
He sort of has to, right? Yeah. Well, he's the one guy that fits with whoever else from that group you put out there, just because of the shooting and the defensive versatility.
Playing at the 5, playing at the 4, it doesn't matter too. So yeah. Anybody else?
That's all I got.
Pods? Do you think he winds up starting in too many games?
I think he's more likely to start than Hield. That's why I went with Hield as an honorable mention.
So I guess if Pods is starting, what about Melton then?
Melton, yeah, I was going to say either of those, whichever of those three. So 2 of them, presumably, of those 3 should be considerations because I think all of them are going to play a lot.
What about Dalton Connect?
I mean, if he's going to get 20 straight points every night, like he'll start. So they'll bench LeBron.
Anybody else? I think that just about covers it.
That's good.
This award is always tough. This year it was especially tough, though. I think because the fluidity of starting 5s now is just going to make this increasingly difficult.
Yeah.
What's next, Grant?
See, this is a hard one because there's a pivot point here. I'm gonna guess you went. I'm going out of order on my own board, and I think you went clutch player next.
You're wrong.
Oh, coach of the year.
Coach of the year.
Yeah.
Is this mine or yours? I think it's yours.
It can be yours.
Okay. I have Chris Finch, number 1, Joe Mazzulla, number 2, Kenny Atkinson, number 3. The classic, they're all kind of classic cases except for Finch. Like Mazzulla, okay, this team just won the title, and now they're missing Kristaps Porzingis. If they continue to win 59, 60 games, whatever, how is he not in it? He just becomes revalidated all over again. Kenny Atkinson is the classic case of, remember Mike Brown with the Kings, like come in, overhaul what was already kind of a promising team. In the Cavs case, they were really good. Chris Finch is, the Wolves are already really good. People were skeptical of the Julius Randle fit, and he's been the one that's been most vocal about, no, this was a basketball thing. It wasn't just about finances. And so if they're better offensively and Julius Randle is fitting in well, he's doing great next to Gobert, next to Edwards, he's running some second units next to Dante DiVincenzo, maybe Dillingham. The awards get named after before the playoffs, so that doesn't matter. So I just have Chris Finch number 1. I think that this is a team I'm interested to see how he moves all these different pieces around. Like even I think one of Rob Dillingham or Terrence Shannon is going to end up having an impact for this team, and he'll figure out ways to get them in there. So the Wolves are already good, but I think this is a coach where we haven't necessarily seen him get too creative on the offensive end just yet. I now think he kind of has the personnel to flex his muscles there.
Yeah, I like that pick because it's like you can envision the reason the Wolves are better is because of like him proving he can win in a different way, like because the personnel has changed so much. It's like, it'll be easy to attribute the successful integration of Randall and DiVincenzo and whatever to Finch, like being adaptable. And we definitely love that. If a coach can prove like Thibodeau would be another one. It's like, oh, he's different, like that. It's not just a one trick thing. So I like that. I like that a lot. I didn't have him on mine, but like, he's definitely got to be up there. So I went, we're the same 2 and 3, Mazzulla and Atkinson, same theory. I have Taylor Jenkins first. I'm just putting a lot on the Grizzlies, just reestablishing themselves as a 50+ win team after the gap year. I think the defense will be really good, and we always attribute the defense to the coach, so that helps his case. And I can just imagine, going against me is the fact that the front office fired his entire support staff, or his entire assistant staff, but they didn't fire him. So maybe that means like, they really do trust him. That's a hard hurdle for me to get over here. I just think the Grizzlies will be better. I think Jenkins had a lot of like, oh, what a great young coach momentum up until last year when his team just got hurt, and that's not his fault. So, and if he like gets some credit for his reestablishing a culture that kind of let Ja Morant get out of hand too many times, and like the Grizzlies seem more professional and mature, like that could be attributed to him too.
Isn't that kind of like a little bit of you started a fire and then put it out though?
Oh yeah, totally. I'm just trying to imagine what the case for him would be. And besides the fact that the Grizzlies might win like 30 more games than they did last year. I think it's funny. Neither of us has Mark Daigneault on here, even though we like the Thunder are going to win 1 trillion games and like everyone agrees he's a great coach.
How does he repeat?
He can't. That's the thing, that's how stupid this award is.
Well, I guess if they won, if they win 74, how do you pick anybody else?
Yeah, no, you don't. I just think This is
okay. Wait.
why isn't
Sorry.
Eric Spoelstra in the top 3 every year? Everyone agrees he's the best coach in the league, and he's just like, I didn't even think about him.
Well, I thought about him, so I'm not as cruel as you are.
Well,
But
but just
that's
like, how stupid is this? I don't know why I'm
I
getting all
bet
worked up
you he
about it.
winds up on one of our ballots, the end of season ballots. I bet you.
Oh, probably, yeah,
He was
because
on, I think he was on mine last year.
well, this award is very much like we just sort of rule out the coaches that we're already sure are great, and we just look for the ones that like haven't been acknowledged yet. Because look, we all 3 of ours have not won it before, so it's
So what if the Oklahoma City Thunder have the defensive player of the year, the MVP, and the most improved player? At that point, does that dilute or strengthen Mark Daigneault's case?
I think you probably should just give them the clean sweep of like every award at that point.
The sixth man of the year
Yeah,
award.
give them
Too.
well, I mean, we made the case there's like 5 guys that could win it for them. You definitely give them you give Press the executive of the year if that happens.
I
Like,
did. I'm sorry. I was poo-pooing over your Jenkins pick, but I do see the vision there.
I mean, I don't love it, to be honest, but I feel like I went with my heart. I kind of thought that, a couple months
Honestly,
ago, and I've stuck with it.
his case last year, just from a defensive perspective, the fact that that team, when you look at all the different lineups they ended up running out, and yes, they weren't trying to win at some point, like they still finished 13th in points allowed per possession. He had a case last year for that.
I feel like we don't do that enough. We like a coach that just fucking survives, like should get like a bunch of 3rd place votes.
He also looks like he can only coach a team named the Grizzlies.
For
so I
sure.
feel how many points do we give him for that?
A couple. I mean, beard. We get beard points. Terrific beard. Very uniform.
I did think about this one. Surprise, surprise. If this team is like top 10 or top 7 in defense, does Tom Thibodeau have a case?
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty high up in the odds, I think, too. Just like his job's I don't know. Is it harder this year? It's hard to say. Like, it's definitely gonna be different. And the depth is a real issue, but less so for him because like he just plays everybody.
I will say he is more flexible than ever, but I think it's more difficult in the sense that this Knicks team is just veering so far away from what he usually values the most, like all of his core principles. And he's gotten more of just, we've seen him play undersized lineups. We've seen him use bigs in different way. But like, this is just not, when you look at this team on paper, even after watching Tom Thibodeau the last couple seasons, this is not a team that you would say like, oh, Tom Thibodeau built this team. Like,
yeah. Oh, this is a Tibbs team. Like, no, not at all.
Is there JJ Redick is the shock and awe candidate, right? Where it's, oh my God, the Lakers won 49 games.
Oh yeah, I can. If they win 49 games, then he's going to be on a lot of ballots, I would imagine. What about Budenholzer? Like, if Phoenix,
Budenholzer's a good one, yeah.
If Phoenix, I don't know. We keep saying if they're 2nd in the West, say, because we're just not going to put anyone over the Thunder.
Oh, he'll have won it, I think.
Right? Like,
first of all, if any team finishes ahead of the Thunder,
give it to him.
If you have 1st in the West and you're not OKC, I'm assuming that coach has won.
Right.
I guess unless it's Michael Malone, who actively seems to hate like the front office he's employed by. And he also,
because like
he actively seems to hate a lot of his own players too.
It feels like there's a lot of tension in Denver. But Budenholzer is one that like the expectation is that he will just make Phoenix operate more, like just optimize them on both ends. And so like if they win a bunch of games, I could see. And we love the 1st-year coach bump. Like that always is helpful.
Honestly, what if Charles Lee and Charlotte goes 42-40?
Yeah. If they make the playoffs for sure. Ime Udoka, like if the Rockets, that's a hard job, right? We've talked a lot about like the lineup decisions are difficult. Like there's a weird set of expectations of like develop these guys, but also like we're ready to win. Like the defense should be really good. I think I don't know. I think his success will be like hard to come by just because there's so many different aspects of the coaching job that like he'll have to succeed at.
It might be easier. Because I was even like, what if the Hawks are just better than expected and like they're very Quinn Snydery now?
Well, yeah, like he was. I mean, I wonder if we must have mentioned him last year on the. I'm sure because I had this thinking of like
Grant. He was my pick.
Okay. No,
preseason. Yeah.
I support it. Like, because first full year, like we can't
Yeah.
judge that half season. We know what a Quinn Snyder team looks like. We know what they value. We like those things. And then Atlanta just didn't play that way at all on either end, really. Yeah, I could see that. You can give it to him a year late.
Well, this might be a better question. Which coaches are you not prepared to make even a tangential case for here? I'll list some. Chauncey Billups, probably. He would be objectively the most like if the Blazers are just in the play-in.
Yeah. Like Brian Keefe, like the Wizards aren't gonna like.
Same for Jordy Fernandez in Brooklyn. I think
Yeah.
you probably have to throw Will Hardy in there because if he's in this discussion, he was probably fired. What about would you like any of the legacy? Like, would you be prepared? Like, could you see a scenario in which Steve Kerr, Greg Popovich, or Rick Carlisle do the thing?
I was just gonna say Popovich is someone I would rule out. Man, sentiment has turned against him. Like, and it may be somewhat fair. Like, he's 75. Like, the fastball is not there. But like, I just don't think that whatever success the Spurs have, I don't think will be attributed to him.
Billy Donovan,
I don't know. I feel like Kerr's just like he's been decorated enough, and I don't know what the Warriors would have to do to get him. I don't, because Coach of the Year always feels like, again, let's acknowledge this guy. Hey, like good. And if we've done it once already, then like we kind of don't do it again, or we're more hesitant to. So Carlisle, I think, falls under that umbrella too, of like he's regarded as a great coach, been around forever. Like we like the new stuff, it seems like.
Who's more likely to be involved in this discussion, Billy Donovan or JB Bickerstaff?
I just don't see any way Donovan is involved, so I would go Bickerstaff.
What if the Bulls are just, I guess fans will be mad at it, but like, what if they're good?
What's good mean?
Well, Josh Giddey winning most improved player, apparently.
I could see Bickerstaff. I mean, like the bar Bickerstaff has to clear is so low because of what happened last year that like, if the Pistons win 34 games, that's a 20 win improvement. Like they, and like, I don't know that he'd deserve it, but like, I could see Bickerstaff getting a little bit of buzz potentially.
Do you think, I guess if the Magic have an above average offense, Jamal Mosley's probably just in there.
Yeah, I actually thought about Mosley just on the, there's a little bit of buzz for him last year. I don't remember what he finished, but I think we at least
got merited for me because this team needs to spend more actual time in transition.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
And two dark horses. Darko Rajakovic in Toronto. Just everyone says they're rebuilding. Jakob Poeltl said they're not attacking the championship in one of the best media day quotes of all time. What if they're just good? I don't think they will be, but that's one. And then also, this is more based on, we know his team is going to be banged up. His best players probably not playing in back-to-backs, but Nick Nurse. And also he has the cachet of, look at how good Joel Embiid was when healthy under him last year, giving him.
Yeah, I like that one. I'm trying to think, like, I don't think Mike Brown is going to get any consideration. Doc Rivers, no. Ty Lue, another good coach, just no. The Clippers aren't going to.
This is like, isn't this kind of like a Ty Lue fever dream right now?
Has he won it before? I don't think he has.
No. I'll look very quickly, but I don't think he has. But he's always been like, oh, look at what he did with this shorthanded team, or the Cavs coming back from a deficit.
Yeah, potentially. I'm looking up Ty Lue right now.
Yeah, there's no Ty Lue here.
Did he? He won the 2016 ESPY Award for Best Coach.
Nice job. Yeah, no, he's not on here. So I could actually see him. I could see, like, if you just don't have Kawhi for most of the year, Paul George is gone, and the Clippers are still floating around like 45 wins.
I mean, I could, if all of the guys we've already mentioned somehow don't succeed, like between like Mazzulla, Atkinson, Finch, like Mosley is, I'm really warming to the thought of him. We probably should have mentioned him more. I can't see it. Yeah, I don't know. And Kerr's not going to win it. I'm just going like left to right on the map. Redick, we've talked about.
Is there anyone we have at this point? If we haven't mentioned anyone, their fan
probably not. Who's the first coach fired?
Can Willie Green win it?
Yeah, he could win it maybe if the Pels win 50.
I think him or Billups are probably the coaches that are most likely to be fired, right?
Willie Green or Billups?
Yeah. Just because the Pelicans are at the point where, okay, we can't trade Brandon Ingram, apparently. What are you changing if not the coach?
Right. Yeah. The last lever to pull type of theory. I like that theory a lot. My guy, my guy Taylor Jenkins might get fired. I don't know. You fire the whole staff, like that feels like a message, but
yeah, that's true.
I don't know. Shall we move on? I don't know what to pick next. Because well, you should go to executive of the year, but I think you're going to go clutch player.
Oh, you were wrong.
Really stumbling to the finish here.
Executive of the year is all yours. I love your number 3 because of the reasoning I know you're about to give.
Oh, right. I was like, what was my reasoning? So Daryl Morey won, just like there was no one on this roster other than Joel Embiid and Ricky Council, the fourth, I think was the other guy. And they're, a good bet to finish top 4 in the East. Like the Tyrese Maxey thing, just getting him to wait in an environment where like you had a former star player saying you're a liar.
Last season case though?
Is that a what?
Isn't that a last season thing, getting Tyrese Maxey to wait?
I mean, he signed him this offseason.
So he didn't let him walk? Is it?
Yeah, I guess maybe it's kind of a bridge from last season to this season case. Okay, he got Paul George. How about that? And then he did well on a bunch of minimums. And in terms of like a grand plan, like executing this bold like total overhaul of the roster, just, the Sixers are completely different and better. And he did a bunch of tricky machinations to make that work. Sam Presti next, he's going to be there forever. You go get Alex Caruso and it doesn't cost you a draft pick. You get off of Josh Giddey and don't have to think about paying him an extension that you don't want to. Doesn't cost you anything to do that. You go get Isaiah Hartenstein, this
stroke of, I also thought, long-term book management brilliance, what they did with Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins too.
Oh my God. Yeah. Just super reasonable, long enough extensions where they're basically underpaid now and are huge trade assets. It's just, kind of perfect. I have Raphael Stone third because he did not hit. Well, this might be totally stale, but as of today, he has not given extensions to anybody. Nobody.
They did get Reed Shepherd. There's that.
Yeah, and they drafted Reed Shepherd. Good for him.
This is a team, though, I would say more so than some others. I mean, Morey's case could definitely be furthered as the season goes because we know they have first-round picks to trade, and they did the KJ Martin deal. I don't know if you mentioned that. Like, that's built to trade. The Rockets could make a trade midseason, too. That would also shift his.
Yeah. So I regret not putting Leon Rose here in one of these spots, but you took care of that for me. Cause like you can talk about like the tiny nuances of, and it's not all him, but like all the hoops they had to jump through to pull off these trades is like insane. So like, maybe that's just a full front office award.
Yeah. I mean, Brock Osweiler, like the salary cap guru for them. But I will say I have Leon Rose third. I have Presti second, which the other thing we didn't mention with the Thunder, I'm getting, did they really do this again vibes with Dylan Jones? And like, also,
you think
the whole Nikola Topic thing too, where do you remember what my comp was for him before the draft when we did that exercise?
You've asked me this before and I couldn't remember. And then you gave it to me and I still don't remember.
It's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was like my highest end comp for him. And so
that's probably why I don't remember
the guy. Yes, he's injured, but he just gets to learn from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I factored into my preseason case anyway, but with Leon Rose, I've down Morey one. Everything you outlined is just, I don't know how, at this point, it's what needs to happen for him not to win the award. Paul George doesn't play this season, probably. I don't know.
Then it's like, it was a worthwhile gamble,
It's, I guess if Embiid's too injured, it's should they have given him the extension? And it's, they had no choice. With Rose, I do have him third because they were creative in how they, specifically with the Towns deal and like the way they're using these players that were on the roster at the end of the season to sign and trade them. They did some of that with the Nets and Mikal Bridges, but you didn't you kept OG Anunoby, but like none of this was team friendly. The most team friendly thing, and this matters, by the way, is the Jalen Brunson extension.
Right. I was going to say
that's a big deal, but this does sort of feel like everything else, like that Jalen Brunson extension will carry it, but like everything else is not that it's debatable, but it has the potential to be net neutral or worse. Because like, if you look at those trades, like if we're sitting here doing this at the end of the season, my framing here, this is my long-winded way of saying is he's kind of probably going to either finish second or win the award, or just not even come close to making it on the ballot type deal, because the Knicks, something fell off the wheels fell off the wagon there. But it's an interesting case because they were creative, and there's the Jalen Brunson extension. But when you look at what they gave up for Mikal Bridges, for Karl-Anthony Towns, how much they paid OG Anunoby, those aren't 100% unequivocal wins. They're not even, for a lot of people. You already traded for OG, so okay, you have to pay him. But I think a lot of people who are even in support of the move, including myself, would recognize that these aren't just moves that were no-brainers that you would make. And so his case is either, to me, going to grow or diminish as the games start to play.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, just thinking back, like with both of the really big moves, the Bridges trade and the Cat move, it's like we had real conversations, and I think it's still kind of unresolved. Like, was that worth it? Like, were those actual positive value plays? Like, I don't know. So I do think part of that like leads into, you got to credit the boldness. Like, you got to credit like, we're going for it. What are these, the fuck them picks, like all like that is like laudable, I think. Especially we're close to past the point of having to mention this, but just like how poorly the Knicks were run for so long. And now it's just like, oh no, we're getting within like 14 cents of the cut, of the various like aprons and cutoffs. And we have done all this creative shit, like signing guys from Partizan Belgrade and it's just like, that's like, okay, we're in the weeds now. Like the Knicks are at the cutting edge of, like, they're not dupes anymore, like they're paying the high prices, but that's just part of it. They're getting all the small stuff like pretty hammered out.
And this wouldn't factor into my case right now, but based off what I've seen in preseason, there's also a chance that the selections of Pacome Dadier or more likely Tyler Kolek end up helping his case rather than being, I think most of the time, oh, this team took Tyler Kolek in the second, whatever. That's not going to help or hurt your case. It seems like there might be an actual chance that he is their primary backup playmaker because they view Deuce as more of a off-guard wing type anyway.
Yeah.
Anybody else that should be like, this was just like, who was I think we covered the 4 people that should be there. Like, do you give, like, how do you weight something like Boston with Brad Stevens, where they just like kept paying their guys, and most of that was extensions too. So it's not even something that kicks in this season.
I don't know. Like, I don't know if just extensions is quite enough, but it's like they actually physically couldn't do anything else. So I don't know how we demerit him for that. Who else did really well?
Do you think I will tell you who doesn't belong on this list? That would be Arturas Karnisovas. Does not belong on this list.
Yeah, not a fan there.
What about Monty McNair?
Yeah, maybe. Because getting DeRozan, who were like contractually obligated to say talent upgrade, that got to do that, and the price was right. I mean, maybe what about the Spurs just keep like horning in on deals and getting extra picks without having to do anything? Like, that's
great.
So I don't even know who to say there. Is it still like RC Buford? Is that who we're crediting? Is it Popovich? I can't remember who actually we credit for their front office moves, but like it's all marginal stuff really. And like, I guess
by the way, that's Brian Wright.
Brian Wright. Yeah. Sorry. Trading away the number 8 pick. Like that's ballsy for a team in their position, and taking Castle at 4, getting the first, what is it, a swap from the Kings in the DeRozan deal that the Bulls just could have gotten if they wanted to.
Chicago.
Yeah. I'm trying to think who else.
The Spurs one should definitely, like, Brian Wright should definitely be up there. What about Minnesota? Like, we're mentioning the Knicks, and I know they only made that one move, but there's just a chance that this team is, I think they're better for the regular season, and I have questions about the playoffs, but like the Rob Dillingham swing was bold, and I don't know. I do think there's a chance that people will use that against their case. Like when we're leading, Tim Connolly's case, leading into that, just because I don't think he's going to play a whole lot anymore. And if he has not necessarily looked great, but like if the Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo additions pan out,
that's if that goes really well, that's like a master stroke to get off the Cat contract.
Was that the riskiest move of the summer? I mean,
I'm struggling to think well, it wasn't the summer. I was going to say Kawhi Leonard's extension, turns out, but that was last
with the Knicks. I guess you could say that they're saddling them, but like theirs looked at more in sum. I think the Mikal Bridges trade and the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, but like the single biggest or most critical decision to break up a core of a Western Conference finalist?
Yeah, that's a bit. I mean, in terms of like right now stakes, that's massive. What about like just a risky moves like giving Brooklyn back that 25 first when that might be the
Oh,
number one overall pick? Like that's pretty risky by the Rockets.
you know what we haven't mentioned? I don't know. I mean, there's a chance he could crack the top 3, but Nico Harrison in Dallas, the
Yeah.
Grimes deal,
Mhm.
getting Klay Thompson, and then also Najee Marshall. We both thought that was a home run
For
signing.
sure.
That
Yeah.
honestly, of all the names we mentioned, that's the one that I could see easiest, like not just climbing into the top 3, but if we're talking an upset, like if Dallas is all of a sudden the best team in the West.
Right. And like Grimes and Marshall and Clay all have really good seasons. Like that you just point directly to the offseason of like they got all those guys and getting Grimes back in that trade with is
Honestly,
just like
I might bump Leon Rose right now for him because of that whole thing was just you give up Tim Hardaway Jr. in seconds and get back Quentin Grimes.
right. That's insane. That's like we're talking about Quentin Grimes like he's a 5-time All-Star, but like you shouldn't get a guy who might really help you in a salary dump. Like that's not how
When
that's
you had
supposed to
no
work.
other, it was just you needed to do that salary dump to do everything else that you did.
Right. Amazing. Yeah, that's a good one.
Grant, do you know what's next?
Let's see, coach of the year, assistant coach of the year. Um, let's see, best concessions. Oh, clutch player. That's right.
Ooh,
The hardest award to pick by a factor of 10
It's
because it's
stab in the dark.
yeah,
I went SGA at 1, Luka at 2, and like I like to get a little creative at 3 with this, but like Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid's going to miss a bunch of time. Paul George will probably miss some time, and also Embiid's talked about deferring more to Maxey. Excuse me. I could see him just being like their go-to crunch time weapon. So
yeah. I mean, he's going to start with the ball, so that helps. Like whatever he does with it from then is up to him. I have Luka 1, Brunson 2, Jokic 3, and it's just like. It's just, I mean, probably both of us should have had DeMar DeRozan on here just because he actually does seem to be the only guy that's always on, the top of the clutch stuff.
well, I thought about him, but him and Fox being on the same team, we talk
Well,
about cannibalization a lot when it comes
yeah,
to consideration.
no,
So.
yeah, I mean, if he's a clutch player of the year this year, then like clutch actually is real. Like it is a real thing. I just went with the guys that I am very confident will be the like be all end all at the end of games for their teams. It's just like, I don't know. It's not a sophisticated approach to it. I mean, we could have, is there anybody else you like gave thought to insofar as you give a lot of thought to this award?
Well, I gave Jokic some thought. I did. So this is Galaxy bringing it too much. I had wondered if SGA doesn't belong on here because the Thunder are just going to not play enough crunch time minutes.
Right. Yeah. The sample will be he'll play 3 clutch games all year.
Right.
He'll shoot 100% in the clutch, maybe.
That's why I can't bring myself to pick anyone from the Celtics in part because of that reason too.
That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah, that you do have to pick a team that you think is like going to be okay, basically.
You could put notable player X into that. Like the answer is probably yes. If they're going to have the ball, one of their top 2 options down the stretch, yes, they could. Joel Embiid could theoretically win this.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron or AD could theoretically win this.
Steph, like Devin Booker, Durant.
Is it James Harden or Kevin Porter Jr. could theoretically? Like who's the number 2 option in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I mean Norman Powell is going to win. Is not going to win 6-man, but he'll win clutch player.
I would love to see though, like someone from a bad team. Like we need not a bad team, but like not a great. Like if Charlotte just has an excellent crunch time record and Brandon Miller was incredible, LaMelo Ball was incredible, that would be just like kind of you root. I'd like to see one of those types of teams win the play-in, not the play-in, the midseason tournament, the NBA Cup. Like just Portland winning the NBA Cup would be objectively hysterical.
Oh, that'd be great. Give me Cam Thomas. Just like the Nets are in very few clutch games, but if they are close, like he's going to be shooting, and he just would have to make a huge.
He probably gets traded if he's winning them too many clutch games, right?
Yeah, right. He just gets benched down the stretch after he's like 17 of 31 in the game to that point.
Yeah, he's too efficient now.
Can't do it.
Yeah, this is just like I don't even know if we like predicting this is so tough. If one of these, what do we have? 5 different players on here. If one of these 5 different players win it, I think we deserve a pat on the back because
I would be super impressed. Yeah,
this is very much a throw it at the wall and see if it sticks.
Mm-hmm.
With that, do you have anything else, or are you ready to take us out of here?
I think that's going to do it. That we almost got under 2 hours for 8 awards, so pretty good. just make sure that as you go gamble that you do not take any of our advice and just maybe like do the complete opposite. Other than MVP, I feel pretty good about our MVP picks.
We have separate MVP picks. So what is your advice here right now?
Hedging? Either just bet on Luka and Jokic.
Yes. Okay.
Because we both have them in the top two. I don't know if you can actually win money doing that. Probably not.
Yeah, you can hedge stuff like that. Like that's
yeah, but like, well, the what's your return going to be? It's like not even going to be worth it because their odds are they have such like good odds.
Oh, dude, I haven't even looked at their odds. I would assume they're both like at least a plus 300. In which case,
I don't know. I assume they're 1-2. You could probably, you know what? Just still don't do anything we're suggesting.
Yeah, I mean, but as of right now, the payouts on them, could you bet on both? Yeah, because Luka. So if you threw 100 on both, you would win money. So Luka is the odds-on favorite at plus 350.
Okay.
So if you throw 100, so you could do that. I'm not recommending it, but in theory, you could do that.
Maybe it's the Wemby DPOY one that is just he's so far and away the favorite that there's like no point.
He's not. He's like not even paying out even money, right?
Right. I think he's a minus. I think he's minus something.
At that point, don't bet on Wemby, even if you think he's going to win. Take a stab in the.
Oh yeah, no. Why would you? Like you're just. It's not worth it. Again, don't take our gambling advice. We don't know what we're talking about. Maybe you do. I don't. Everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Let us know what your picks might be. Let us know in the comments on YouTube. Join our Discord if you want to weigh in. Links for that in YouTube and podcast description. Wherever you're getting these podcasts, consuming them, please rate, review, subscribe. Lots of comments on the videos. That's always very helpful to us. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, spread word of mouth. That's just as helpful. Help us get our subs up. Make sure you are subscribed. That's very helpful, especially on YouTube. I think it's going to cover it. Thanks for checking out our awards. We're getting close, Dan. Like a couple days, the game's going to start to count. So
I'm excited not to watch them.
I'm excited. I'm excited to hear you pretend like you've ever watched a game in your life. That's what I'm looking forward to this season. Shouts Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jared Allen.